Good morning, everyone. That's really the reason I had to move the start time back to 11:30, so I could still say good morning. But just kidding. um,
Oh man.
I have Gabby here with me. She is going to stay here with me today because it's very, very windy at my house, and we are supposed to have storms roll through. I don't think the storms are going to come in till this evening, but who knows? And we're supposed to get like 6 to 8 inches of rain for the next few days. So
Oh, that stinks.
that's great. Good times had by all. Uh, but in case my power goes out, which has only happened once on here, but it has happened. Fortunately, it came right back on, and you guys just all continued to chat because I couldn't shut anything down. Gabby's here, and if my power goes out and it doesn't come right back on, she can shut everything down. So that's that's the plan. Hopefully, we don't need it, but I told her she had to at least say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
And Adair said
My job
hello.
is done.
Your job is finished. Yes, Adair. I was laughing because I was still sitting here setting everything up. And I was like, next stream, reading the clock just for Adair. Just kidding, Adair. You make me laugh. Hey, Flashman, how are you doing? Hope you are doing okay. I'm doing well. Just hoping to get through. These storms are supposed to be worse than what came through Sunday. Sunday wasn't bad. I think Adair's area got it worse than us. And then up north in Indiana got it. There were some fatalities up there. So, yikes. Hey,
Because of
Taya,
the
how are
wind.
there was wind and tornadoes up there.
Jeez.
There was I was watching, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's like huge, Ryan Hall. Um,
Yes.
I would watch him when it comes on because basketball's on here and this is a basketball state. So, and the stuff is in Indianapolis. So they, sorry, you're having tornadoes. We can't take the basketball game off. Um,
Mm, that's
so
tough.
I was like, whatever, people. So I was
If it
watching
happened
him.
around here, they would have just been sitting there while the tornado was in the middle of the court. They wouldn't have cared.
Yeah, well, I mean, the game was a blowout, even. Sorry, Michigan
Yeah.
State. Like, it was a rough day for the state of Michigan on Sunday. That's all I can say. Uh, but so yeah, Ryan Hall had showed the semi that had the wind had blown it over and it was up. I can't remember which county, doesn't matter, up in northern Indiana. Well, he never like went back to it. Well, that guy died
Wow.
when his truck blew over. So I'm like, well, no wonder you didn't go back. So I knew he had, I don't know what happened. He was outside of the truck. Um, so I don't know. I don't care. I don't want to know. And I don't know if there was like a tree that maybe fell on somebody. Like, I don't know. There's just a lot of damage. And there was, like I said, there were several tornadoes, but between northern Indiana and Michigan, it was crazy, crazy weather. So I don't know. But no, no snow today, Flash Fan. It's going to be 79. Yesterday was 50. Today's almost 80. And tomorrow will be 60.
It's 41 right now here.
It's just it's crazy. The Indiana Seahawks versus the Lakers. I would watch it. I would watch it. Yes, Adair. Fingers crossed and prayers the weather is nicer to us. Yeah. Hey, Ronnie. Long time no see. I was so glad to see you pop up on Discord yesterday. It's been a while. I'm glad your husband is recovering and hope you are doing well as the caretaker. That's a tough one. It's a tough job. Sometimes they need a break. Yeah, April Fools. I kept waiting for that yesterday because I took my car to get the oil changed yesterday. Then I went with Bree to Mad Dog's 9-month checkup, and the place I took it called me, and they're like, "Hey, you need new tires." I'm like, "What? I only have 45,000 miles on this car. What are you talking about?" He said, well, "We can't even rotate them because your wear bars are showing." I'm like, "I never drive anywhere." But sure enough, I'm like, April Fools? Like, there
I know, right?
was no April Fools. He goes, you're not like you just get them before winter. I said, okay, fine.
I need new tires too and brakes.
I knew that I did. Like, I knew I needed new tires, but he said the factory puts softer tires on them so the car rides better. I'm like, well, insider secret. And and okay. So that's why those tires didn't last that long, and they are the factory tires, so whatever. But yeah, I did not hear that the Daybell has the Daybell that Daybell has a jury seat. I have not heard that. Interesting. So, Gabby, I do have to tell you before I get started here, I was watching a hearing yesterday, and it's not funny. It was a daughter. Um, she was trying to get a restraining order against her dad for harassment because he bailed her now ex-husband out of jail after she'd filed like DV charges on him, or he'd been arrested
Mhm.
for DV. Sorry, these glasses, I'm still trying to get used to them. Yes, I am a dare south of Indy. It came out when the dad's lawyer was questioning her, and she was just a peach, let me tell you. Oh my gosh. Just wanted to take her and just hug her around the neck really tight for a little bit, like, just stop talking, lady. And and she I was laughing so hard because I'm like, "Oh my gosh, we joke about cousin, brother,
Yeah.
husband." She
Sister lovers.
married her first cousin, and so he kept calling her ex-husband her her cousin husband father's nephew. I was like, "Whoa." And then her husband's mother had just passed away. So I'm like, "Your mother-in-law just died?"
Oh, that's priceless.
Oh, it was crazy. I was like, "We have a real live one here." It really does happen sometimes.
Uh, Keeping it in the family, I
Oh
guess, huh?
my gosh. I'm like, I've never looked at my cousins and thought,
I
"You."
gotta get a piece of that.
Yeah, I gotta get some of that. Yeah, I could look at him and be like, you're a good-looking man. Not in that way. You're just a good-looking person, or you're a pretty woman. But
Yeah.
I don't need to marry you.
It's
Oh,
like,
it's
"Hey,
crazy.
how about us becoming, kissing cousins? What do you think?"
He was like, "Okay. Look who's here. Ooh,
That
magic 8
was
ball.
so funny.
Shall we tell the F off today?"
Oh,
Uh,
that was so funny because last night I saw Chrissy's thing on Discord,
oh my
and
gosh,
I
you
was just
sent that.
laughing so hard, and then
Shit,
woke up today,
movies.
had to go return something at Kohl's, went to go leave Kohl's, and I saw the 8 ball on the shelf, and I was like, "The universe is just telling me to think about Chrissy."
Oh, that's so funny. For those of you that don't know, Christy was in Discord one day, and I think she was going to Burger King, and I meant to put up something about Burger King because we have a joke about BK and a felony, and I hit this meme accidentally, and it posted, like, immediately. It didn't give me a chance to do anything, and it was a magic 8 ball, and it basically told Chrissy she was effed. And she was like, "Oh, wow, thank you," and I was dying. Like, I was dying because I didn't know what to do. I did not know how to use Discord very well at that time, even worse than what I know how to use it now, and she's like, "Do I need to get Gabby in here?"
It it was the best thing. It was so
Oh
funny.
my gosh, and then I was just crying because I was laughing so hard. Because thank goodness Chrissy has a great sense of humor. She knew I did not mean that. Because I would never mean that towards Chrissy. Dare votes to, F off Lori Daybell. Okay. We have not find out if the proof showed. we will continue that coverage tomorrow evening with that wonderful joy of a woman. I had read a little bit more about her today. Yep, we'll discuss it tomorrow.
Chrissy, how could I ever forget that?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Hey, Christine, how are you doing? I hope your weather is not getting you. Hope you're having some nice spring weather.
Yeah, that's what happened when I walked by it and then I went back to it and I was like, I wonder if it's going to tell me to F off. And I started shaking it. I was like, nope.
Shake at your own risk. When Gabby messaged you this morning with the 8 ball, I was like, I don't know what question you asked it, but at least it didn't tell you to F off or that you're effed. Like, said yes.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Good
So
times.
we are going, so we, on Monday, we saw the closing arguments, the verdict. No surprise, she was found guilty on all charges of the Aileen Wuornos, since I just kind of jumped in there. So we are going to go into the penalty phase of this trial, and the same jury, so we'll get to see their shining faces again. They decide the penalty on here. We will watch Flashman. She is not innocent. She's broken. I think we're
Wait,
going to hear
that's Flash fan? I thought that was Batman.
Batman. Batman, Flashman. It's a man. I have I'll you're going to see some real life part of me here in just a second. I have a very hard out at 3 o'clock today, my time, because I have to go get all that covered up. I can usually cover it up so you guys don't see it when it starts showing, and I haven't had an appointment yet, but I can't cover it up on the day of my appointment. Otherwise, the color probably wouldn't take. So, yeah, no. What?
No, he has two accounts.
We are effing off only us in chat? No. No. Yes, you have
Like,
used
I
this account.
volunteer.
Are you? Yeah, you're volunteering. No. No.
Oh man.
So we're going to watch opening arguments. They're about 20 minutes. And then we're going to go into their first witness. This is a witness for the defense. It's a psychiatrist. I've listened to part of what she was saying, and it's interesting. We're going to get a peek into Eileen's life and find out more about kind of the ages that she was when things happened to her, when she had her child, um, when she was on the road as a young teenager doing things with people that should have never been doing things with anybody that age. I don't care if they were offering it.
Yeah, what
Still
was she,
wrong.
like 14?
14. I think we're going to find, yeah, she was 14 or 15. I think this doctor says 15. It doesn't matter. 5 years she spent on the road doing that. Like, and those people took it. There's so many things there. There's so many components right there that are wrong, and that just did not help her. Well, hello, Zach.
He didn't want to leave you out.
Thanks. I appreciate it. So, I don't know what's happening other than the universe is telling you you're old, Flash fan. I don't, you're vintage. I can't help it. That's what happens.
Watch out, AARP's next.
Exactly. You're going to get a tote bag.
Maybe you can get sponsored, Flash fan. And a nice sponsorship. And a tote bags.
And when you get your tote bag, we want a picture of you with it. So, if I didn't say it, we have closed captionings for both this one, the openings, and for the doctor. So lucky us.
Oh, Zach wants me to say that bastard.
Oops. Hey, Snapple. That's too. Zach the bastard.
Zach the bastard.
His day is now made. I don't know if he heard you or not. Oh,
I
and
like that
Haley
he calls
Mouse.
fan whippersnapper.
I know. Smash fan. He is not. He's not a whippersnapper. No, he's vintage. Whatever. What is
He's
old?
vintage. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's Zach. They're BFFs who didn't go to school together.
That was
Oh,
hilarious.
that was so funny. I had to read that so many times. All right. I got to start this because
I'm gonna mute,
otherwise
otherwise,
we're not going
yeah.
to finish it. And like I said, so we'll go till 3, wherever this doctor is, because her testimony is 2.5 hours long. Wherever it is, that's where we're stopping at 3 o'clock. But other than that, here we go. Let me know how the sound is. And the judge is going to speak to the jury for just a minute. And of the very family dependent on you is not what he says, because closed captions on YouTube are great. Oh, this isn't on YouTube. Whatever it's on. You know what I mean.
Found the defendant, Aileen Wuornos, guilty of murder in first punishment for this crime is either death or life in prison without possibility of parole or 25 years. Final decision as to what punishment shall be imposed rests solely with the judge of this court. However, the law requires that you, the jury, render to the court an advisory sentence as to what punishment should be imposed upon the defendant. The state and the defendant may now present evidence relative to the nature of the crime and the character of the defendant. You are instructed that this evidence, when you consider with the evidence that you have already heard, is presented in order that you may determine, first, whether sufficient aggravating circumstances exist that would justify the imposition of the death penalty, and second, whether these mitigating circumstances are sufficient to outweigh the aggravating circumstances, if any. At the conclusion of the taking of the evidence and after argument of counsel, you will be instructed on the factors of aggravation and mitigation that you may consider. Counsel, do you desire to make opening statements, or do you desire to present testimony?
Your Honor, may we have a moment to make a
Yes,
brief
sir.
opening statement?
Yes, sir.
Proceed, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Well, we're not at the end of the case, but let me just give you a brief idea of what to expect. I have an opportunity to make an opening statement at this time, as does defense counsel. And His Honor will, after you hear evidence, then give you some more instructions. The penalty phase in Florida is separated from the guilt or innocence phase, and it's usually separated just by the very nature, by a little bit of time. There's a reason for that, and I think it's primarily to give juries an opportunity to settle down and, without passion or prejudice or bias or sympathy or anger, then make a very calm, deliberate, and just decision with regard to punishment without being so close to time that the guilt or the innocence phase is being decided. Even though your verdict as to penalty is advisory, it carries great weight in Florida. It is very seriously considered by the court. And the law in the state of Florida is such that certainly, and I know you wouldn't, but certainly you should not think, well, it's really up to the judge, it's not too important. It's very, very important. It's what you do or do not recommend. But the final decision and, of course, responsibility is up to the presiding judge in the trial. And, of course, this case, we know it's Honorable Uriel Blunt, Jr. The verdict need not be unanimous. You recall the verdicts that you returned last night by law are necessarily unanimous. But as to the penalty phase, the verdict need not be unanimous. But a majority must vote to recommend the death sentence, if in fact that is to be the recommendation. In other words, it would take a minimum of 7 jurors to vote in favor of or supportive of the death penalty before that would be the recommendation. If it was a 6-6 split, then the recommendation is for life imprisonment. The aggravating and mitigating factors have been established by statute, so you're not going to be left to try to figure out what is or isn't be considered in the first place. Will not be presenting anything that's not lawful. Judge Blunt will see to that if we're not able to do that on our own training. He's here to make sure you don't receive lawful evidence. And your decision really will be to decide whether or not the aggravating factors would justify the imposition of the death sentence, or whether there are such mitigating factors presented, if they are presented, which would outweigh the aggravating factors and therefore justify life.
Objection, Your Honor.
The burden with regard to proof is still on the state and must be beyond a reasonable doubt. And the defense, I believe at this point, still has virtually no burden. We have a burden. Most of the aggravating factors that we would present have already been proven in the trial. And tell you that to let you understand two things. One, yes, you not only may, but you should consider the evidence you've heard up to this point. That's part of the state's evidence with regard to the aggravating factors. In fact, it is the majority of that evidence. You will hear some additional evidence, but we will not go back and present the whole case again at all. One, that's not permissible, and number two, certainly it's not necessary. You've already heard it. So what you've heard in trial to this day should be considered as you determine the aggravating factors. The aggravating factors that the state intends to prove, which we believe will justify and do justify a recommendation that Ms. Wuornos receive a sentence of death, are as follows. One, that she has previously been convicted of another felony separate from the ones here, involving the use of violence or the threat of violence against another person. Number two, that this particular conviction, murder in the first degree, which your verdict confirmed and in fact was the final arbiter last night, that it was committed while in the act of carrying out a robbery. And of course, your verdict confirms that already. You've already made that decision.
Objection, Your Honor. Sorry, Mr. Tanner.
And next, that the murder was committed to avoid or prevent, in effect, Ms. Wuornos' arrest. And that was already presented to you, Deputy Gorzepa's testimony, and almost 2 weeks ago now, with regard to witness elimination. And she, on the witness stand herself, told you that she felt no one would believe her who took her story in its best context, and therefore she decided to kill him so he couldn't tell on her. That is, in fact, killing someone to avoid being arrested and held responsible for your acts. Next, that the felony robbery, the murder, was carried out for the purpose of obtaining financial gain. There's been overwhelming evidence of that, the selling of the property and of the keeping of the property. And finally, that the murder was committed in a cold and calculated and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Again, I would respectfully say that your verdict has confirmed that it was a premeditated murder, and that her, certainly from the time she fired the initial shots, if the premeditation was not firmly established before she did, we contend that it was. That's why she had the pistol. But in any event, certainly as the succeeding shots were delivered and ultimately as she went around and confronted Mr. Mallory and shot him virtually to death, that amply supports the aggravating factor of cold, calculated, premeditated.
With all due respect, Mr. Tanner, objection, Your Honor, heightened premeditation.
Don't be led astray as you listen to the evidence. We need not prove every possible aggravating factor recognizable under the law. There are many recognizable under the law, such as that the murderer was under another sentence at the time they committed the crime, or it was meant to disrupt government, or that a government official was killed in the performance of his duties, or a police officer in the performance of his duties. Or even the particular aspect of requiring particularly heinous, cruel, or atrocious torture type murder. The state doesn't have to prove that to justify and to seek and to obtain a recommendation of the death sentence. Those are just some other aggravating factors that appear in some cases. They don't appear in this case. And we're not asking you to consider those as aggravating factors.
Hello, birthday girl. Happy birthday, Haley. How are you today? I was hoping you were going to be able to pop in so I could tell you happy birthday. And I hope you have a great day, afternoon, since you're a few hours, since your day's 5 hours ahead of our day. But yeah. And too many more. Many, many, many more happy birthdays. Aileen is chewing gum. Naughty, naughty. Gabby. Eileen's like, hey, girl, how do you get your hair like that? I think it's crimped right here. Hey, I was looking at it saying she may regret it now just as much as we regret it for her. And I'm glad she didn't crimp it all because that would have been hilarious. Okay.
You will hear perhaps other evidence of mitigating factors. Don't believe that this is simply a balancing test as to how many versus how many. You may give such weight as you see to each aggravating factor, or such weight as you see, or lack of weight, to each mitigating factor. And if even one aggravating factor would, in your opinion, majority of you justify the imposition of the death sentence, that is sufficient. We believe that the evidence that we will present over the next day and a half will convince you that the sentence that is appropriate in this case, the sentence that would do justice, and the sentence which is justified by the evidence, is the sentence that Aileen Wuornos stayed with her life for the crime she committed in murder against an hour. Thank you.
So, Secretary, make a note of saying you reserve those statements.
Your Honor, we would prefer to make it at this time. Mr. Tanner, Mr. Miller, Ms. Jenkins, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good afternoon. You've heard 2 weeks of state's evidence regarding Ms. Wuornos' guilt. You've seen Lee Wuornos testify on the stand. You saw her cross-examination. You observed her demeanor. You've seen her here in court. And some of you must have observed her behavior here in court during the course of the last 2 weeks. And I dare say that many of you must have been thinking to yourselves, why? Why is this? Why is Lee the way she is? This is the part of the case where you get answers to the question of the law. Mr. Tanner talked to you a little bit about aggravating and mitigating factors. His Honor will instruct you at the end of the case that any aspect, anything regarding the accused, which you as a juror believe to be a mitigating factor, is sufficient to warrant a vote that Lee Wuornos not be sent to her death, but that she be sentenced to life imprisonment. Mitigating factors, as His Honor will instruct you, are not limited, and they are reasons.
Did you see her face when he said that? She was like, either 1, she didn't want life in prison, or 2, she didn't believe she was going to get life in prison. Her smirk that she has right now, probably, maybe that's what decided it for the jury. She was like, whatever, I don't care.
Reasons why you as a juror can say, for this reason, I will vote to spare her life. People do not simply fall from the sky. Lee Wuornos did not simply fall from the sky. Her biological father, the evidence which you will hear will indicate to you, was a person who hanged himself in a penitentiary where he had been convicted of kidnapping. Her biological mother abandoned her before she saw her first birthday. Lee Wuornos did not simply fall from the sky. There are biological, genetic, and environmental factors that make each and every one of us what we are. And there are such factors here. And they make Lee Wuornos what she is. And when you hear those factors, those mitigating factors, factors that are...
Welcome, Squid Raiders. How are you all doing? We are in the penalty phase of Aileen Wuornos, also known as America's first female serial unaliver, even though we all know she's not, because there's been others before her, way before her. She's been found guilty at this point. These are the opening statements from the defense to why she should not be sentenced to capital the punishment. Try to put that nicely. And we are going to, he's doesn't have a whole lot left for his opening, and then we're going to listen to one of the psychiatrists that I think is a psychiatrist or psychologist, I don't remember, who they call to the stand. And we do hear some interesting facts about Eileen's life. It wasn't great. Doesn't give her an excuse to unalive people, but you kind of can understand it. And I think I asked the question the other day if they thought that today she would still be sentenced the way she was, or if they would have given her something different. If you've seen the movie Monster, this is the woman that movie is about. This trial took place in Florida in 1992. So we are the chicken penalty. Flash me. All right. On that note, I'm going to get back to it.
Our law has is the embodiment of the compassion, the mercy, and the justice that we as a people hold dear. We are going to stand before you and ask you not to impose a sentence of death on this woman. Lee Wuornos, you will hear from the evidence that will be presented from the time she was a little kid, 6, 7, 8 years old. Her school records consistently reflected this is a person who is impaired. This is a person who is not well. This is a person who needs help. She never got that help. She was raised by her grandfather, a person who you will hear evidence on, drank. He was an alcoholic. He was a drunkard. And you will hear evidence about his being abusive. Lee's grandmother, a person who Lee believed to be her mother up until her teenage years, is a person who Lee described as a heavenly angel. She feels for her. She loves her. She's not deceased. She loved her. And this heavenly angel was a person who was meek and humble, and a person who could not intervene when Lee needed help. A person who could not deal with the dysfunctional family in which Lee was raised. You will hear evidence during the course of this proceeding answering that question, why, about a fire in which Lee was burned when she was a young child, and about the problems with her self-image resulting from that fire. During this proceeding, you will learn about the fact that Lee was raped when she was 14 years old. And I know that's a word that's been used during the last 2 weeks. She was sexually abused and raped by a gentleman in his 40s. And she became pregnant. And she was so terrified of what her family would think of her that she tried to hide the pregnancy. And eventually nature took its course and the pregnancy could not be hidden. And the grandfather found out. And he was ashamed. And he sent her to an unwed mother's home. And there she had the child she never knew, the child that was taken away from her. People don't fall from the sky. Lee Wuornos did not fall from the sky. There are things that she was born with, and things that affected her as she grew up, and things that mitigated in this case. At the age of 15, Lee was put out of her home. She had no skills. You will hear about her school records. You will hear about the fact that she had no skills. She hitchhiked from place to place, and she did, in order to make a living, the one thing that apparently she could do. She sold her body. You will hear about the fact that she was abused physically and sexually on a number of occasions while hitchhiking, while trying to make a living by selling her body. You will hear that she became an alcoholic, and you will hear that as she grew older, things got worse. You will hear about a young man that Lee loved very much, who left her. And because she left her, Lee got herself a gun and shot herself in the stomach, trying to kill herself. And you will hear evidence about Lee's impairments, about what the genetic and the biological factors, and about what this environment has done to Lee. You will hear about why she is sitting before you today with this demeanor when you will be deciding whether she lives or dies. You will hear that for Lee, the world is a very strange place. It is a hostile, it is a frightening, it is a bitter place.
And yes, for those of you just joining us, that is a shot of the jury. They show them a lot. They focus on them a lot. It's not something we're used to nowadays, but back in 1992, apparently it was okay. Also, Gabby, did you notice they never let the guy back in the jury box and he's still there? So I don't know that he's an alternate. They just won't let him in.
Really?
Yeah, he's still sitting up.
He has the same yellow thing that they're all wearing on their shirts.
I think he's a juror. It just
That's
doesn't look
messed
good
up.
that they won't let him in the box.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe maybe they put him in timeout or something.
I don't know. It doesn't look good.
She doesn't see the world the way you and I see it. She doesn't understand the world the way you and I understand it. She cannot function in it the way you and I function in it. You will hear about her cortical impairments, about her inability to control her impulses, her inability to reason, her disturbances, her impairments, her inability to cope with the world around her. It is a hostile, frightening place. And the way she reacts, because it is a hostile, frightening place, is a way that we see as inappropriate. His Honor will instruct you on mitigating factors. You as jurors, when you consider mitigating factors, you have a very hard job. You have to look at the world, if only for a moment, through the eyes of somebody who is impaired, who is not like you and I. And you have to see the world through those eyes. You have to see the frightening, persecutory world in which Lee Wuornos has lived and now lives. A world in which she has no solace. A world in which she has no place. And yet a world which has made her what she is, and which counsels you as a jury to say, yes, I understand mitigating factors. I understand what they are. I understand there are reasons why I should spare a life. And when someone is this impaired, when someone's deficits are so great, I will say life in prison. I will not vote to take that life.
I'm muted. On to the doctor. These do have the best audio. It is really nice. Sorry, I know you're seeing me scrolling. So I think there's 12 jurors in the box, and then maybe he is the alternate, that he's just still sitting outside the box. I don't know. If you see him, you'll understand why I'm saying it doesn't look good. And we still have closed captioning, so that's great. And here we go.
Doctor, when you settle in, if you could please state your full name for the record.
Dr. Elizabeth McMahon, M.C., M.A.H.O.N.
Can you tell us a little bit about your educational background?
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Florida, a master's degree in psychology from Purdue University, a doctoral degree in psychology from the University of Florida, and a 1.5 years postdoctoral training in the areas of neuropsychology and forensic psychology.
What is neuropsychology?
Neuropsychology is the study of brain behavior. It's how the brain functions as measured by various assessments of behavior.
And doctor, if you could define forensic psychology for us.
It's that area of psychology which overlaps with the law, which applies psychological principles to the legal field.
And as I understand it, you are also a clinical psychologist.
Neuropsychology and forensic psychology are both subspecialties within clinical. My doctoral degree was in the area of clinical with the subspecialties.
And what is clinical psychology? Just
It's a study of behavior, more specifically human behavior, and more specifically the most pathological of human behavior. That is it treats of those areas which are most deviant from the norm in terms of assessment, diagnosis, and treatment.
can you tell us a little bit about your experience in clinical psychology as the broad area with the two subspecialties?
First of all, I interned at a mental health outpatient clinic in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I then remained there for a year and a half as director of their emergency and commitment unit, doing crisis intervention and commitments under the Baker Act. Following the awarding of my doctoral degree, I returned to the University of Florida for my postdoctoral work, and then remained at the University of Florida for 2 years on the faculty of the Department of Clinical Psychology, teaching, particularly assessment in the graduate program, that is personality assessment in the graduate program, coordinating the outpatient psychiatric unit, psychological unit, I'm sorry, and supervising interns and practicum students. I then went into private practice for 10 years, during which time I taught in the criminal justice program at the University of Florida as an adjunct professor, and at this time hold a courtesy appointment in the Department of Psychiatry, where I'm a guest lecturer in psychiatry at the School of Law and the Department of Clinical Psychology. In 1987, I went to Seattle, remained there for 3 years, working with the state attorney's office and as the court evaluator on a psychiatric inpatient involuntary commitment unit. It was a 32-bed unit of severely psychotic individuals who'd been involuntarily committed, and I was the court evaluator for that unit. During that time, I was also adjunct professor teaching assessment to third-year medical students at the College of Naturopathic Medicine in Seattle, John Bestier College, and worked as the neuropsychologist on a year study of HIV positive individuals in terms of how that might or might not be affecting their cortical functioning. In 1990, I returned to Florida and have returned now to private practice. Most of my practice is in the area of forensics. Most of my work is doing diagnostics because that's what I like the most, and I do some adult psychotherapy.
Are you licensed, doctor?
Yes, I am.
Can you tell me a little bit about your licensing?
I'm licensed in the state of Florida. I was licensed in Washington during the time I was there. Relicensed in the state of Florida at the present time.
Have you published in the area of psychology and/or neuropsychology and/or forensic psychology?
Yes. I have 2 chapters in textbooks dealing with the area of neuropsychology as it applies to the legal arena. I have done fairly extensive research in the area of individuals who receive the death penalty versus life in prison. I have written in that area. It is currently somewhat in litigation in that some defense attorneys in the state of Florida blocked the publication of the work, feeling that it would be
Objection, Your Honor. As to what other attorneys might think.
Go ahead.
on their basis was that it would be used by the state in support of the death penalty, and they would like for it not to be published. It will be published, but it's being delayed. And I have another article coming out now subsequent to the work on with the AIDS project in Seattle in the Journal of Naturopathic Medicine.
Have you been appointed by an expert witness in the courts of the state of Florida?
Yes.
Have you been retained as an expert witness by the defense in criminal proceedings? Have you been retained as an expert witness in civil cases?
Yes.
And you talked a little bit about your experience with the state attorney's office in Seattle. Have you been retained as an expert witness by the prosecution in criminal proceedings?
Yes, I am currently involved in a case with the prosecution in the 8th Judicial Circuit right now.
And have you testified previously before Judge Blum?
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, we would tender Dr. McMahon as an expert in the areas of psychology, clinical psychology, neuropsychology, and forensic psychology.
May I inquire, counsel?
Just very briefly, if I may. I do forgive Judge. Mrs. McMahon, when you say doctor, we're not talking about a medical doctor, are we?
I'm not a physician. I'm a doctor, not a physician.
You're a doctor much as an individual who's got their PhD in English or philosophy and published a doctorate would get a doctorate. You can't prescribe drugs, can you?
No.
If a patient came to you or a client came to you for some type of treatment, you'd have to send them elsewhere if they needed medication. Is that true?
I would make that assessment, and if I felt they needed that evaluation, I would send them elsewhere for that part.
You cannot prescribe drugs, correct?
No, I do
When
not.
you say licensed, you're not licensed as a medical doctor.
No,
You're not licensed to prescribe drugs.
that's correct.
And there is a difference between a psychologist then and a psychiatrist, to the extent that a psychiatrist has a medical degree.
Oh, there are many other differences.
Okay, well, that's only one of many.
Yes,
Now, you indicated that you were currently retained as a state expert, or are you under subpoena as an expert or as a witness?
according to the letter, I'm being retained as an expert.
Is that a case involving a death penalty?
Yes.
Prior to this occasion, have you ever testified on behalf of the state of Florida or any state as a state expert on behalf of the death penalty in which you advocated the death penalty was appropriate?
Objection to advocated, Your Honor. That's an improper question to an
That's a
expert.
very good question.
Would I be correct in understanding that this is the first case you have ever been retained in the field of psychology by the state of Florida?
No,
As prosecuting witness?
no,
You have previously testified before.
An improper voir dire as well, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Answer the question.
your question was I ever retained by the state in a death penalty case?
My question, ma'am, have you ever testified on behalf?
I don't even remember the gentleman's name. It was a homicide in the 8th Judicial Circuit. I don't remember his name. It was several years ago. It was prior to, I was originally retained by the defense. It was prior to the penalty rule. I was originally retained by the defense and then called by the state to testify.
You were primarily a defense expert in your career, is that correct?
I am obviously called by the state, retained by the defense because they're the only ones who can have a confidential expert to do the evaluation. As far as being primarily a witness for them, less than 20% of the cases.
How many times have you been qualified as an expert in the state of Florida in the field of psychology?
I have no idea. Hundreds,
Hundreds?
yes.
How about in a death penalty case?
Probably,
Would I be correct in saying no more than 2 times?
If the witness can answer the question.
Just let the answer for that.
no. I've been retained, I've been qualified in death penalty cases probably 25, 30 times.
It's your testimony that you've been qualified 25 times, testified as an expert in death penalty cases?
Yes. I think that's, as near as I can remember, that would be right. I'm going on the basis of the published research that I have, and I've done well over 100 and some first-degree homicide cases.
In each of those cases, when you qualified, was that as a defense expert testifying on behalf of the criminal defendant?
All but 2 or 3 at the most.
So out of 25 some odd times, you testified 22 to 23 times as a defense expert.
Objection is a defense expert, Your Honor. It's who calls a witness appointed by the court.
Not necessarily appointed by the court as a confidential expert.
Objection overruled.
And nothing further, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Doctor, how many clients have you seen in your career in a criminal setting?
Hundreds. I don't know. I've been doing this for 17 years. I don't know.
How many times have you been appointed by a court in a criminal setting? Just an estimate.
Yeah, I'd say probably 40% of that time by the court.
Do you have lists and logs of who you've seen through the years and where you've testified through the years and things like that?
No, I admit I probably should sit down and go through the files and be able to answer this more explicitly. I never have, and so I don't.
How many defendants did you evaluate for the prosecution in Seattle?
Objection, Your Honor, is any relevancy of the defendant.
Objection overruled.
I did very little private work up there. I did one case for the state and one case for the defense
And
that I
those
was
were?
called in by each.
And those are homicide cases?
Yes, the one for the defense was, state was, the one for the defense was, I think battery, assault and battery and larceny of an automobile.
You are familiar with what a psychiatrist does, are you not?
Yes,
You have worked with psychiatrists in the past, have you not?
yes,
Can a psychiatrist provide personality testing to an individual?
no,
Can is a psychiatrist qualified to provide neuropsychological testing to an
Your
individual?
Honor, I'm going to object. It's outside the scope of her expertise as to what a psychiatrist is capable of doing.
If she can answer the question, she can. Objection overruled.
no, they're not trained to do neuropsychological testing.
Is a psychiatrist licensed to provide intelligence tests to an individual?
No,
When a psychiatrist wants to obtain testing to find out what the individual's functioning is from neuropsychological, from personality, from intelligence testing, who did the psychiatrist send that person to?
they have to send them to a clinical psychologist.
And have psychiatrists send patients to you in the past?
Yes,
How often? Withdrawn, is that a common thing?
yes,
Are psychiatrists trained in medical school as to psychological testing? Are they
No.
trained to administer?
no.
Your Honor, we would tender Dr. McMahon again as an expert in those areas.
Any further board hire?
No, sir.
Wire. The state brought it up that she's not a psychiatrist, and then it's like he questions her. Can a psychiatrist do this? Can do that? It's out of the scope. No, you brought it up. Also, you guys just argue about everything. These group of lawyers have argued like no other during this trial. It's crazy. And also, Gabby, just for your own amusement, I do wonder who's taller, the witness or the judge.
Doctor, do you know Lee Wuornos, the person seated to my right?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell us how it is that you know him?
I was called by Lee's attorney, Ms. Jenkins, and asked to evaluate her. I met with Ms. Wuornos. I have met with her on 5 different occasions for a total of approximately 22 hours. I met with her on February 26th for 6.5 hours of neuropsychological and personality testing. I met with her on March 8th for 6.5 hours of interview. I met with her on December 23rd, and those are all 1991, for 4 hours of interviewing. I met with her on January 8th for 4 hours of interview, and I met with her on January 19th for 1 hour of interview and a supplemental test.
Did you, during your evaluation of Ms. Wuornos, have the opportunity to review documentation regarding her life?
A great deal,
Would those include depositions in this case?
yes,
Would those include statements of witnesses?
yes,
Would those include schoolwork records regarding Ms. Wuornos?
yes,
Statements from members of her family?
yes,
statements from individuals who had come in contact with her in the past?
Yes.
Prior psychological or psychiatric evaluations?
Yes, both.
Have you had an opportunity to speak to any individuals who had come in contact with Ms. Wuornos in the past?
Yes, two.
Did you also have the opportunity to review the testing and the notes of other doctors who have seen Ms. Wuornos currently?
Yes, I have.
Did you also have an opportunity to review various police reports regarding this case?
Yes.
And did you have an
Let me
opportunity?
say investigative reports, that's what you mean?
Investigative.
Yes.
Are the materials which you reviewed materials upon which an expert would normally rely in formulating an opinion?
Yes.
And you indicated you also tested Ms. Wuornos.
Yes, I did.
Did you provide neuropsychological testing to her?
Yes, I did.
Why did you do that?
Well, there were several reasons. I was aware before I went to see Ms. Wuornos that I had been informed by her attorney that she had some history of alcohol ingestion. That would be one reason. Very early on when I first went to see Ms. Wuornos, she was telling me that there were things she could not remember, that she felt confused about the incidents. So I would do it for that reason. In any forensic evaluation, one of the things I'm always going to assess, in addition to intellectual functioning, is memory. Just to either rule in or rule out anything the defendant says they can or cannot remember. And that's also part of the assessment in terms of competency to stand trial, to make sure that they can remember adequately, enough to at least cooperate with their attorney. So for all of those reasons, I would have done it. And certainly once I was aware of Ms. Wuornos' life history, I would do it neuropsychological.
Why is that?
Because of her history of alcohol ingestion, because of one or more instances of physical altercations resulting in some sort of head trauma or head injury. Once I obtained her school records, looking back on her school records, early testing, I would certainly then want to get current testing on it.
And you indicated, I think, that neuropsychological assessments deals with impairments of the brain or the cortex. Well, you straighten me out. What does it deal with?
It's cortical functioning, and if there's an impairment, most likely it is in the cortex. There can be times when the impairment is subcortical and it's having an effect on the cortex. So we're measuring cortical functioning, but if there's an impairment, it may be at a deeper level but is simply causing the effect at the cortical level.
Did you also provide intelligence testing to Ms. Wuornos?
Yes, I did.
Is intelligence testing something that goes along with the neuropsychological testing?
Yes,
Did you also provide personality testing to Ms. Wuornos?
yes, I did.
And what is personality testing?
It's an attempt to assess various levels of the personality. Now, that's a very complex phenomena, and there's always the feeling that we don't know everything that there is to know about it, certainly. But we do try and assess at as many levels as we can with as many types of, not really tests, but what are called projective procedures. They're not tests because there's no right or wrong answer. But they're what's called projective procedures, and by that I mean that the stimuli for them are fairly vague, and so however the individual responds, it is coming from within them, because there's very little, it's a very amorphous stimuli, so they can do most anything they want with the stimuli. They're simply asked to respond to it. And with the idea that however they respond, that's what's coming from within them as opposed to what's being determined from the outside.
And you also provided objective personality testing.
Yes.
These tests, both the projective and the objective tests, are they empirically based? In other words, when you interpret them, do you have empirical norms that are used to do that?
Yes.
And what is that? Just real briefly describe that for us.
They have been given to hundreds and at this point thousands of people. There are individuals whose sort of work is to keep updating what's called the norms, and that is if we take people who have no diagnostic psychiatric diagnosis, who appear to be the average individual in the street, how would they answer? And then we look at people who are diagnosed, let's say schizophrenic, how would they answer? We look at people who are diagnosed, say manic depressive, how would they answer? We look at this over various age ranges and over various educational levels. And by that way, we have some idea of the manner in which various groups of people would answer. Any given individual that we assess, then we look at against that sort of a background and say, are they within normal limits? Are they outside normal limits? If they're outside, what does that mean? What do they look like in terms of normative data?
As a result of the testing, your review of records, and your face-to-face examination and evaluation of Ms. Wuornos, were you able to formulate any opinions with regard to her mental health function?
Yes.
Were you able to formulate those opinions to a reasonable degree of psychological and neuropsychological certainty?
Yes.
What is Ms. Wuornos' diagnosis?
I would have two. One is that she does evidence a mild degree of cortical dysfunction. By that I mean that it is mild. There's no, if you were to meet Ms. Wuornos on the street and carry on a conversation with her and that was the only problem she was having, you would not recognize it probably. In other words, it would take some testing to pick it up. It is that mild. It is primarily in the area of language. In other words, it's more left side of the brain than the right, but it is diffuse, and by that we mean it's throughout the brain. It is not something that is a function of what's called a penetrating trauma or such as a severe head injury. It's not something that is compatible with like a tumor, a stroke, what's called a space-occupying lesion. It is called chronic static, meaning it has been that way for a long time. It will continue to be that way. It doesn't change. It's mild, it is diffuse, but it's more on the left side of the brain. It causes her some problems. It interacts with her with other problems that she has, but that in and of itself is quite mild.
What was the other diagnosis that goes along with the cortical dysfunction?
I would diagnose Ms. Wuornos as what's called a borderline personality disorder. By that I mean an individual who engages in intense and unstable interpersonal relationships, who is very labile in their emotions. By that I mean roller coaster. 1 minute happy, 1 minute sad, 1 minute angry, 1 minute laughing, 1 minute just very rapid change of emotions. Who is impulsive, who has a great deal of trouble with intense anger and not being able to modulate that well, who may engage in self-destructive behavior, either very overtly in terms of suicidal attempts or more subtly in terms of lifestyle, who has an identity disturbance. And by that, one may mean either, and in this case, either what's called a gender identity disturbance or disturbance in terms of more long-range goals, values, what they want from life, who experiences chronic feelings of emptiness and alienation, and who has a great fear of aloneness and abandonment. These are people who have what's called impaired cognition in terms of the way they both view the world and the way their thought processing operates. They have very intense, overwhelming feelings that they have a great deal of trouble modulating. And their life tends to revolve around the two primary themes of victimization and alienation or emptiness. I can go into more detail, but that's sort of a thumbnail description of what is a borderline personality. They are people who are difficult to deal with because they tend to be somewhat unpredictable, and we frequently have a difficult time dealing with their intense emotional reactions, which are so variable. One of the things about borderlines is that they tend to incite strong feelings in other people who are around them, and they tend to wear out therapists. And on an inpatient unit, you keep the census of borderline personality disorder individuals to no more than 4, or they will turn your unit upside down. So they're difficult people to deal with. They're extremely unhappy people, and they tend to project that unhappiness onto the world.
What are
Chrissy, I'm with you. This was way back before they really knew anything about that disorder, and I do wonder how much has changed over the last 30 plus years and how they deal with them. I've never heard anybody say that anybody else wears out a therapist because, hey, who needs an excuse not to go? Somebody dealing with this. Flashman, I do not want to be able to send you any good Indiana snow. I will send you some hot sauce, and you'll have to get the Southern food, fried soul food somewhere other than me, because also I don't know how to cook it. And it would be gross by the time I sent it to you. But stop saying it's going to snow here. It's not. It is 76 degrees. Thank you.
withdrawn? What can you tell us about Aileen's life and her background that is consistent with this disorder? May it be a causative factor that speaks to it?
The primary theories of how borderline personality develops are three. One is that there is some cortical dysfunction, so that the individual has a great deal of trouble assessing and integrating the cognitive, the emotional, the behavioral, the social. They sort of never are able to assess what's going on around them accurately, integrate it, and learn to deal with it. That's one theory. The second theory is that there's very early abandonment. And a third theory is that the family dynamics are such that make for what's called splitting. As I understand Aileen Wuornos' history, looking through all of the immense amount of material and talking to people, she was born after her parents had separated. Her parents had divorced. She never knew until subsequent to her arrest who her father was. The reason being that he was later imprisoned and committed suicide, and the family never wanted to have anything to do with him or to never talk to either of the children about him, either Ms. Wuornos or her brother, and in fact changed the brother's name later because he had the same name as his father. His name was later changed because of that. Her mother, who was very young at the time, in her late teens, abandoned Ms. Wuornos and her brother. In essence, went out to dinner one night and did not return. Calling Ms. Wuornos' grandparents and saying, "You come pick the children up, I'm leaving town." She and her brother were picked up by their grandparents and adopted by them. She did not know she was adopted until somewhere between the ages of 7 and 10. I'm going to refer to her adoptive parents as her grandmother and grandfather, because that just makes it easier for me. So she was raised by her grandparents, she and her brother, and assumed that the aunt and uncle were her brother and sister until she was somewhere between 7 and 10 years of age. Her aunt then told her that she was not her sister, but rather her aunt, and she went to her grandmother and asked, and the grandmother said that was true. She was raised in a home with a father figure who drank heavily, who worked all the time but drank, to the point of falling asleep on the floor or the couch, who has been described as a Jekyll and Hyde when he drank. He was very kind, very patient man when he was sober, but very sharp, angry man when he drank. Ms. Wuornos' biological mother has described him as the meanest man in town, that he was verbally abusive to her growing up. Ms. Wuornos' biological mother has also said that...
Without objection, we're going outside the scope of any medical testimony. We're bringing strictly hearsay from an uncalled witness now.
Doctor, as to the information that you're testifying to, is this information that an expert would normally rely upon in formulating an opinion?
Yes.
Please proceed.
Ms. Wuornos describes her grandmother in terms like an angel. She was wonderful. She could do no wrong. She loved flowers and trees, and there's the split. There's a good mother, bad father split here. Ms. Wuornos' biological mother describes her mother as not being that way at all, but rather as also being verbally abusive. I have no way of knowing which perception is accurate. Maybe both are accurate in different points in time. In any event, certainly her grandfather was ruled the household, and the grandmother was very much subservient to him. This was the home in which she grew up. At the age of 9, she and her sister were playing with a chemical that one of the brothers, either her biological brother or her uncle, had made, which when lighted made sort of little poof sounds and went up in smoke. They were in a shed, and apparently Ms. Wuornos dropped the bottle. It broke, and her sister said, well, there's very little there. Go ahead and light it, which she did. Somehow or other, something went wrong, and it exploded in her face, and she had burns over her face and hands. This had quite an effect on her. She was hospitalized for several days and then out of school for several months, and very concerned about scarring and how that would affect her later on. She did well in school early on, but then along junior high school began to have trouble. You can see her grades, see her testing from the 3rd grade, where she tests out with an IQ of 107, go along a few years more, and her grades have dropped to the mid-90s. Her IQ test scores have dropped to the mid-90s. And by the time she's 14 years of age, we see an IQ where she has a dramatic split in IQ between right-sided brain functions and left-sided brain functions. So the split that we see as an adult was evident back at the age of at least 14.
Let me just stop you there. Was there an interplay between her school performance and the family situation?
One would certainly assume that. And the test, the report.
That's no rule.
The psychological report indicates that on the first day, indicates, first of all, that she tried very hard on the tasks. So we assume that it was a valid and reliable reflection of how she was doing at the time. But that I think the second day that she began to be more comfortable and start talking about difficulties that she was having, that she did not like school, that she was having difficulty interacting with peers, and that by this time she was having difficulty interacting with siblings at home. She is characterized at that point, 14 years of age. She's characterized at that point as beginning to not only have difficulty in school. Let me back up a minute. Her school records also reflect from the very beginning that she had difficulty with vision, and she has got 1 ear, I don't remember which ear, the hearing loss, and that she always had to be seated in the front of the room because of the hearing loss, and that her grandmother was asked repeatedly to get her professional help for this, and that she refused to do so, feeling that Ms. Wuornos was simply didn't want to take direction, didn't want to listen, but that there really wasn't anything wrong with her. She has a documented hearing loss and documented vision problems. Okay, at the age of 14, Ms. Wuornos was raped by a gentleman who said that he was a friend of her father's, offered her a ride home in town, said that he had just left a bar and just left her father at the bar, and that he offered her a ride home. Took her into the woods, offered her a beer. According to Ms. Wuornos' story, had a weapon. She agreed with him that if he would just put the weapon away, she would not try and run or anything.
Doctor, let me just stop you for a moment. Does Ms. Wuornos' account regarding that incident confirmed by sources independent of her?
Yes,
And did you have a chance to review those sources?
yes.
That information. Keep going, I'm sorry.
Counsel enlighten us to what sources the doctor is referring to.
We can do that, Judge. They could say it for
I'll
cross,
do it
but,
cross, Judge, that's fine.
but doctor, give us some of the sources and give us what they said.
There are records when she went to a later school saying that she had been raped earlier. There's also a statement given to an investigator up north by her sister saying that she had been raped at a very early age.
How old was she at the time? About 14 or so?
Ms. Wuornos would say 13 to 14 if I've put everything together, putting all.
I thought the same thing, Gabby. When she told of the scenario of when she was assaulted, taking her into the woods, drinking, weapon, and that's exactly what she did.
Yeah, it's like she's just replaying it each time, you know?
Yep. It's pretty sad. And again, I've never excused her behavior and what she did, her actions. She's just I just said there's just reasons why I can't call her a monster, like
Yeah.
the movie, just because of everything that she went through at
Right.
such a young age. I can't even just take everything else out of it. But imagine finding out that your grandparents are, or your mother and father are your grandparents and your siblings are your aunt and uncle.
Yeah.
I mean, she said, she kept saying between 7 and 10. I'm like, just say between 8 and 9. Like, it's so sad. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
and the one thing they haven't mentioned, and I don't know if she will or not, was what I read in the article that covers her trial, and it's kind of a site about capital punishment, was that her grandpa, her dad, whoever, was, assaulting her too. So he there's essay from his friend. His friend, I guess, is the one that allegedly impregnated her in a horrible way at 14. It's just, there's nothing good there. And then she has a hearing problem and they're like, yeah, you just don't want to listen. And she
Yeah.
burns herself. I'm just going, what is wrong with you people? Or you're
Well,
all
at that
gone
age,
now.
you know, at that age, your brain isn't fully developed. So when something like that happens to you at that age, I'm sure she was extremely confused and frightened, you know?
Yeah.
And no, Flashman, it doesn't give her the right to unalive people. You're right.
Yeah, and I say that all the time. It doesn't. She's just, I think Haley was the one that said she's just broken. She was just
Yeah.
broken. And I'm with you, Ryan. Like, I feel horrible that she never stood a chance. And
Yeah, from like day one.
yeah. And everybody does, Flashman. Like, everybody has stuff in their life. Everybody. And you do have choices. I just don't know that she ever learned how to make the right choice. Like when she started, she was very intelligent, as Gabby pointed out, and then she starts sliding, and whatever's happening with the left and right brain starts happening, and I just don't think it's like her growth was stunted there,
Yeah.
and she never learned. She didn't grow up. She didn't mature. It's just it's bad. This horrendous treatment does such different things to people. No one handles it the same. Exactly. And my husband and I have this argument all the time about people and horrible things that happen to them in their lives and different choices that they make. Some become like John Wayne Gacy. Some become billionaires. I don't know. It's you just don't know. And I'm not speaking of any billionaires in particular because I don't know any. Too bad. But oh no, I don't feel like she should have been set free by any means.
No.
I don't think that at all. I don't, and like I said, she made such a face when the defense, when her side was giving the opening statement for this part of the trial about life in prison. She just kind of like looked funny, like maybe that's not what she wanted.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly, Ronnie.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's not a spoiler alert unless you just haven't been watching, but she's going to get to talk about what we've talked about before and what Aileen talked about on the stand. She got kicked out at 14. She was surviving on her own as a lady of the night from 14, and she had customers, which I will never not say the customers were not right in this situation. That's gross. She was 14 years old. And you guys, not you guys, men were paying her.
Yeah, you have to think too, like she lived in that house, basically got abused her whole life, and then ran away, and she had nothing,
Nothing
you know?
but her body.
Yeah.
And she used it. And I mean, at 14, what job was she going to go get?
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. I know people probably get mad and think we're making excuses for her. I'm not. I'm not making an excuse for her. I'm just saying you can understand it to a point. I would never say she was okay to unalive all the people she did. No way, Flash fan. We were not saying she needed to be
No.
free. No way.
No.
Nope.
No, but I was saying, like, if she had gotten help before, none of this probably would have ever happened,
Yep.
because she would have learned certain things for herself,
And being back in when it was a long time ago, Flash fan, was the help was the help available? Like it is, there is more help available today, and we're used to that
Yes.
than what would have been back there. And I don't know if she said it yet or not, but I think at some point she even talks about that borderline personality disorder not being like not putting that on children, not putting that diagnosis on children then.
Mhm.
So would she, if she was already having that at 14 or before, would they have even said, yes, this is what's wrong? There's something wrong with her. Or would they have just looked at her as she's an unruly child?
Yeah, I mean, they did that, even when I was a kid too. They tell you have ADHD and your parents like, no, they're just a kid and they don't put you on medication. And then, there's a ton of people growing up now, older, and they're getting diagnosed with it and they get on the medication. They're like, oh, my world is so different now. I wish I had this when I was a kid.
Absolutely. And I think because like when you were growing up, like when my kids were growing up, ADHD was kind of newer, and it seemed there was two sides to that either you really just thought the kids were being unruly and the teachers didn't want to deal with them, or daycare didn't want to deal with them, or the parents didn't want to deal with them, or you really thought maybe there was something wrong. It took a long time for people to kind of come to the middle on it and be like, okay, there's something here. At least get people tested. At least check it out instead of just writing it off.
Yeah.
And it's changed. Everything's changed a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Chrissy. No, Flashman, not 1962. Was not alive even then. But Chrissy says comes back to nature versus nurture. She did not have nurturing.
Yeah, definitely.
And I agree. And it's the men and women that only look for young girls and boys is gross.
Yeah.
And I
That's
get it, Ronnie.
nasty.
It's you could just talk about it forever. And I agree, Haley, that there was not support for people in her position at that time. And again, Adair, not excusing her actions. Her actions were very wrong. But like Gabby said, the fact that she was assaulted by an adult man that was her friend, of her father's, her grandfather, father/grandfather, same person, in the woods, gave her alcohol, gave her beer, had a weapon, and that's basically what she did to these other people. It's like she got stuck in that moment in time and she never left it. And it just, to me, that's where she just stayed.
Yeah.
And it didn't take her long to get her back there and get her angry and just put her right back. The environment she was in helped to shape her actions, coupled with being a product of the abusers themselves. Exactly right, Chrissy.
Yeah.
Exactly. Everything is learned.
And then even though she chose that path of becoming, Lady of the Night, who knows what else happened to her through that journey too, so it's just more abuse on top of abuse.
Yeah, and it probably wouldn't take much to just flip that switch.
Oh,
you could probably just
sure.
say the wrong thing to her, look at her wrong, just make her feel like Ronnie says, here we go again. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this again. I don't have to.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know. Watching this trial, like I said, would not let her out of prison. I think I might have given her life if I was sitting on that jury. Maybe not at that time, because my own opinion on capital punishment has changed watching these trials. There are some people I'd give it to in an instant because I think they deserve it. You guys all probably know who those people are, and I won't repeat their names.
Yes.
There's some people I think need to sit there and just be miserable for the rest of their lives. And I hope they have long, long, long lives in prison. But I don't know. I don't know. Oh, Flashman, you would never do that. I would find you. Just so you know. You can never leave, Flashman. Yes, some people need to sit there and think about what you've done for a long, 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 long time. Like 90 years plus would be great, even though, it would make them very old. All right, I'm going to hit play now. Back to this little teeny tiny person.
All the records together, she would have been just 15 when she delivered the child, so she would have been 14 at the time she was raped. She was 15 February 26th, and she delivered early March, or March 24th.
And this is the child resulting from this incident?
Yes, from this incident, she became pregnant, did not tell anybody for 6 months because of being afraid of their reaction. And then her father sent her to a home for unwed mothers. She delivered and the child was placed for adoption. Ms. Wuornos returned to school finished out that school year according to her records. At some point in that summer, she ran away from home. She will say that her father had been abusive to her, physically abusive at that point, certainly verbally abusive, all the way through their statements of him saying to both Ms. Wuornos and her brother that they never should have been adopted, that he wished they could take them out in the backyard and shoot them, hang them from trees, that they were more trouble than they were worth. This was the constant thing that she grew up with. She ran away from that in the summer of 1971, was gone approximately 2 weeks when she learned of her grandmother's death. Returned for the funeral, and the following day was picked up by the police and sent to a training school. Subsequent to her release from the training school, somewhere within the next 6 to 8 months, she returned home, and 2 weeks later, her father told her to leave, and she was on the streets. She then traveled around. She was then 15. She was on the streets on her own, traveled around, returning home maybe once every 2 or 3 months, and that how often she returned home varies in terms of whose account.
Where did she sleep?
In the woods in a tent, in abandoned cars, in any place that she could find, and with some neighbors at one point. People talk about her being around town in other towns nearby and around that town, on the streets late at night, and then sleeping wherever she could, and then eventually left the town.
I need a moment.
That was a court reporter changing her paper in the whatever that little teeny tiny court reporting machine was called. That's who said I need a moment, just so you know. It took me a second to figure out who was talking when I listened to this morning. It's like, there's a voice from somewhere.
Began hitchhiking.
Did she ever return to school?
No, never returned to school. So she completed the 9th grade, and that's the end of her formal education. This time also was beginning to drink and was into drugs of all types. I believe everything except heroin. And increasing in her ingestion of alcohol. Began hitchhiking around the country from Michigan, which is where she was raised, to Colorado, Florida, back to Colorado, back to Michigan, generally on the move. States that her primary ways of getting income were hustling pool, odd jobs, and prostitution. Ms. Wuornos stated to me that she'd been a prostitute from the ages of 15 to 20, and that was her prime source of income at that time. And during that time, she got into a number of scrapes with the law.
When she started hitchhiking at 15, did she have any skills?
None.
Do her school records reflect any training that she could go out and use to find employment?
No. And what jobs she did have throughout her life have been things like lawn maintenance, motels, waitressing, unskilled labor.
At the age of 15, did she have the borderline personality disorder?
My hesitancy is because, yes, though we don't like to label teenagers with that kind of a label.
Why is that?
That tends to be a heavy-duty label, and we tend not to want to do that to children or adolescents in the hopes that sort of maybe something will change and they'll grow out of it. So frequently at that age, one would see adjustment reaction of adolescence with mixed features or some sort of diagnosis like that. We try very hard not to put adult-type labels on children and adolescents. So did she have it? Yes, she had it, but would she have been diagnosed at 15? Probably not with that label.
Did she have the cortical dysfunction at age 15?
Yes, that's definitely obvious in her school records and testing.
You indicated her school records prior to 15 showed a verbal performance IQ split that is consistent with current testing.
It's even more severe than most of the, well, it's very compatible with one of the recent testing, and it's a little bit worse than the split that I got. By the same token, it's all in the same ballpark. We've got a split that's beyond anything that's within normal range. So.
What's the significance of that, the split between her verbal IQ and her performance IQ? What does that tell the clinician?
A split in either, and of that magnitude in either direction tells us that the brain is not working in concert. One of the things that is necessary for us to function in the world well is for our brain to work in unison. It must work in concert. It must work as a whole. It's sort of like an orchestra. It either all the parts are in unison or they're not. And if you're going to be able to have a smooth melodic effect, then it all has to be working together. And if it isn't, you get you get noise. So what that says is that our brain is not working in concert. Most especially what that says, since the split is with the verbal side so low, is that the area of brain that subserves language is the area that is not working up to par. And since we learn and our whole life is conducted by language, then the very mechanism by which we learn and live and function both internally in terms of our self-talk as well as externally with the world is impaired in Ms. Wuornos. Again, can she read? Yes. Can she understand what she reads? Yes. Can she speak? Yes. Though her expressive abilities are far below her receptive abilities, further than most of us. All of us have our expressive abilities are a little bit lower than receptive. In other words, we understand more than we can say, but with her, it's greater than average. And it is certainly a split that is, if you will, pathognomonic. In other words, it's in and of itself. That split alone, if nothing else were operating, that split alone would tell you there's something wrong with the brain. By the same token, the kind of cortical dysfunction that she has is not, I'm not saying that there's anything structurally wrong with her brain. I want to get that real clear. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the structure of her brain. In other words, if she were to have an EEG or a CAT scan or an MRI, she would show up fine. Everything is structurally intact, but it's not functioning right. It's as if you had with your car, if your car were, you had all the parts to your motor there and everything is okay and it's complete, but you have sand in the gas line, let's say. Then you go to drive your car, it's going to sputter, it's going to maybe cut out on you, it may not start. You drive it a little ways and it'll stop and start and sputter. So it is that way with Ms. Wuornos' brain. It's structurally complete, as your car would be, your motor would be structurally complete, all the parts there, but it's not functioning right. And it's not functioning right because the various parts of the brain are not functioning in concert.
Good morning, Sir Frank. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. And Flash fan, of course, Lori Vallow got an all-male jury because she probably thinks she's going to use her womanly wiles to get a not guilty. Just kidding. Not kidding. I don't know if I'm kidding. She's gross. And also, I do think Richard Allen should be free. For anybody who saw me shaking my head, no. That trial just is a bad trial. It's bad, bad, bad.
It's a complicated thing, and I don't know if I'm putting it.
The cortical dysfunction problem that you're talking about, is that a physical problem?
It's a physical problem.
Or is that a matter of choice?
Oh, no, it's not a matter of choice. Nobody has any control over how their brain functions.
And the borderline personality disorder, is that a matter of choice? Is that something that a 6-year-old wakes up and says, I want to be this way?
No. Not only do we not have choices in terms of these sorts of things, but if we had choices, believe me, that's not something someone would wish to choose.
Why?
Because the individual is a very unhappy, I guess, discontented individual who cannot cope with the world, cannot figure out how to respond adaptively in the world to get their needs met. And it's like they go through life figuring out that they sort of have some sense that other people out there are doing it okay and they're not. But it's like they can't figure out how to do it okay, how to get their needs met in a way that is functional and adaptive and works. So it's like they can't get through the world in a way that works.
A person like Ms. Wuornos, is she mature?
No.
In what sense is she not mature?
No. Ms. Wuornos is probably one of the most primitive people I've seen outside of an institution. By that I mean that she functions at the level of very basic. By basic, I mean small child needs. We're talking about food and shelter and clothing and an attempt at some sense of security, an attempt at some sense of okayness and contentment that most people have figured out how to do and gotten beyond that so that they're more into things like making a living and contributing and mature interpersonal relationships. And those are the things we begin to think about in adolescence. We're no longer at the level of basic trust and security needs. Those are things that we provide for infants and small children. That's the level at which Ms. Wuornos operates for that. Her whole lifestyle.
Did you talk to her about her stopping and taking drugs?
Yes.
Did she give you any time period for that?
She said that about the age of 17.
Did she tell you anything about her drinking?
Yeah, that she stopped that when she was arrested.
Arrested on this case?
Yes.
Keep going, I'm sorry.
Her whole lifestyle is one of constantly being in a state of sort of living on the edge. It's a state of potential danger. It's a state of never being at the point of choosing good food, a good place to live, adequate rest, things that would be nourishing even just to her body, never mind her mind or her psyche or psychological life. It's at that level of always living right at the edge of getting physical needs met. When I first saw Ms. Wuornos, let me put it this way. Ms. Wuornos today, though she is about 35, 40 pounds lighter, has lost about 35, 40 pounds from when I saw her the first time, looks immeasurably healthier in terms of her skin, her eyes, her hair, everything in terms of health. Looks immeasurably healthier right now than when I saw her a year ago, which was in February after she'd been arrested in January. At that point, there was that look of deprivation of just somebody who's living a very disorganized life on the streets.
You indicated that these people have feelings of abandonment. People with borderline personality disorders. What is that? What sense do you have of that in Ms. Wuornos' case?
Well, she certainly was abandoned by both parents, and then, of course, raised by grandparents. There was given the verbal statements by her grandfather, there certainly is, that's not a person who's there for her emotionally. Although Ms. Wuornos states that her grandmother was this angelic individual, the very fact that she was afraid to tell anybody that she was pregnant for 6 months indicates to me that she didn't have a good, trusting, secure relationship with her caretakers. So we have no one that is there for her as a child. Otherwise, there would have been a sense of trust and security.
Is her judgment that of a normal individual?
No, she shows very poor judgment.
Is her judgment impaired?
Yes.
How about her insight? Does she have the insight of a normal adult?
No.
Is her insight impaired?
Yes. To ask Ms. Wuornos to reflect for a moment. Sit and reflect about the situation you're in. How did you get here? How do you think this happened? No idea. No clue. There's a lot of externalization, which is typical for borderlines. Everybody out here is responsible. There's no sense of themselves as the actor. They're always the reactor, and they're always reacting to everything that everybody else did. But they're never the ones, from their perception now, they're never the ones that are in control, making the decisions, acting, and therefore responsible. And therefore, when you ask them to reflect upon that, there's a total lack of insight, because they cannot put together, because I did A, I got to B. They can't do that.
Is that a
Mr.
function of the,
I need to change my phone.
That poor woman must be typing up a storm over there. She's got to change her tape again. I don't know. Brian, I was thinking, do I know people like this? I think some of us all have a little bit of that in us. It's not my fault. But then we can come around to where maybe it was. Slightly. Touch. My husband would say, it's never your fault. I know. I'm glad he realizes that now too.
Thank you.
is that a function of the makeup, the psyche, the dysfunction in the brain of folks with cortical dysfunction, such as Ms. Wuornos and borderline personality disorder, or is that a matter of choice?
No, it's not a matter of choice.
She doesn't choose to see the world the way she does.
Objection, Your Honor, leading, also object.
Withdraw.
Sorry.
How does she choose to see the world? Does she choose to see the world in any way?
Yeah, I don't, do any of us choose to see the world? We simply do. We don't have a choice about seeing the world. Now, how we see it, Ms. Wuornos sees it as very typical, again, of borderline personalities. It's malevolent, it's persecutory. She's a victim. Her paranoia is frequently sky high. It's an angry, unpleasant, out to get her place. And that's partly what I meant by borderlines being extremely unhappy people. If we can sort of stop and think what it would be like for any of us to see the world as malevolent, as persecutory, as victimizing us, and that we're totally incompetent to deal with that. We may strike out at it periodically, but we're incompetent to deal with it. That's an extremely unpleasant place to be in day after day.
You talked a little bit about her dysfunctional family and some of the testing that was done for her in her schooling years.
Yes.
Do you recall a report of April 13th and 16th, 1970 in Ms. Wuornos' case? A school report?
Yes.
Do you recall whether that report reflected information such as what you're telling us today?
Yes, it did. There was the split. There was the there were several things. Seeing herself as uncomfortable in her role, in other words, in the female role. There was the extreme guilt, well, I think they characterized it as a very harsh superego, or I forget exactly how they put it. But it engendered a great deal of guilt in her and concerns for family, concerns for how her behavior affected other people.
Did you speak to her adjustment?
That had been going downhill since the beginning of junior high school.
You also described Ms. Wuornos as laybot.
Yes.
What does that mean?
That's that their emotions are on a roller coaster. Very, very intense. Oftentimes sort of overwhelming them with their intensity. But it's the individual who in 5 to 10 minutes can cry and laugh and be angry and be happy and be sad and be all those things. I have not seen Ms. Wuornos since she's been here in the courtroom. During the times that I have been with her, I have watched her do this. I have watched her laugh and cry almost simultaneously, that rapidly, and go back and forth. And one can do that. You can, if you want to find out how fast it happens, you can stimulate that. You can make that happen. But it is in response to the external world. They don't have that core constancy that most of us have. So they're constantly, what I said a minute ago, they're reacting. They're not acting, they're reacting, always reacting to the external world. Borderlines lack a core constancy that most of us have in terms of who we are, what we're all about. Most of us have that sense of ourselves, which borderlines don't have. A lot of character disorders don't have it, or personality disorders don't have it, but in particular, borderlines don't.
Does she have cognitive impairments?
Yes,
What are cognitive impairments?
that's what I meant by language, by the split in the
Section asked and answered.
split in the IQ test. She also, her memory function is variable, as one would expect with this kind of split. And that is things that are nonverbal. She remembers quite well. By that, I mean geometric designs, faces, not as good, but okay, borderline. Borderline meant differently than borderline personality. Borderline score. But the things like geometric designs, she remembers certainly adequately. Events, what's called episodic memory, in other words, episodes, she can remember. But semantic memory, that is memory that relies on language and on concepts and manipulating words, I think her score was in the 23 percentile. And that's taking into account her age, which is not an issue here since she's 35, but her education, since that's 9th grade. It's matched against other people who are 35 and only have a 9th grade education, and she scores in the 23 percentile. That's obviously quite low. As compared, for instance, to her nonverbal memory for things like geometric designs, which is in the 61 or 64 percentile, somewhere around that.
You had the opportunity to evaluate Ms. Wuornos' mental health functioning at the time of the malady, did you not?
Yes.
And were you able to formulate any opinions in that regard?
In terms of her mental health functioning.
At the time of the malady? Let me put it this way. Did she suffer from a borderline personality disorder at the time she was with Mr. Mallory?
Yes.
Did she suffer from cortical dysfunction at the time she was with Mr. Mallory?
Ron, can we allow the witness to testify objection meeting?
Go ahead.
Yes. Those are things that are constant from early childhood, basically until she dies. I mean, those are not things that are going to be changed. We don't know any way to change them at this point.
At the time that she was with Mr. Mallory, was her capacity to conform her conduct to the requirements of the law substantially impaired?
In my clinical opinion, it was.
Why do you say that?
I have to go back to Ms. Wuornos' account. In my clinical opinion, Ms. Wuornos saw herself, correctly or incorrectly, saw herself as threatened, saw herself as in severe, imminent danger. Now, whether that was accurate, I don't know. Whether that was a distortion of what was going on at that moment, I don't know. But in my clinical opinion, that is how she saw it. That would be compatible with the personality dysfunction, with her cortical dysfunction, personality disorder, with the cortical dysfunction, and with her account, which I have now heard 4 or 5 times, and which has been consistent all but one of those times, which has been consistent in its essentials. Because of that, because of all of those things put together, in my clinical opinion, she was not capable of conforming her conduct to the requirements of the law.
Wrong at the time.
Well, yeah, that's part of that. That gets to be a very complex question. Can she distinguish right from wrong?
Your Honor,
If
I'm
you
gonna
were-
check. Judge,
Sir,
maybe approach.
go ahead.
I think that's the longest time they've ever gone without an objection or asking to approach this whole entire trial. They're growing up. Sir Frank, you think this woman is a nutcase. Which woman are you talking about? The one on the stand or the one on trial? Or both? We were chatting earlier before you got here just about the stuff that she has seen from the records that happened to Aileen as a child, and just very messed up. Not saying we excuse her unalivings, but man, that woman, no wonder she had issues. I'm looking forward to cross because that's always better, but we should be getting close. Yeah.
You talked about her substantially impaired capacity to conform her conduct to the requirements of law. Even with that capacity, could she distinguish right from wrong?
You've got to qualify them. If you took Ms. Wuornos out of that situation and simply asked her in a moment of calmness or sitting on the beach, is it wrong to take somebody's life? She would tell you yes. At that moment, feeling threatened, the question of whether that was right or wrong becomes irrelevant, as it would with any one of us. It becomes irrelevant at the moment at which we're confronted with what, in my clinical opinion, Ms. Wuornos believed was a life-threatening situation. At that point, we don't stop, put everything on freeze hold, and try and figure out whether what we're about to do is legal, illegal, anything else. We simply react. She is going to react more quickly, with less thought than the average individual, given her impairments anyway. And if she's in a situation which she believes she is threatened, then she's going to react instantaneously. And the question of whether it's right or wrong isn't relevant. It's not whether or not she would decide it's right or wrong. It's no longer relevant.
Was her capacity to appreciate the criminality of her conduct substantially impaired at the time she was with Mr. Mallory?
In my clinical opinion, it is. Again, Ms. Wuornos does not see that her behavior was anything other than that she was defending herself. The idea that in some fashion there is responsibility on her part in some part for that is not something that Ms. Wuornos can appreciate. She will say, I had no choice to be out there. That's what I do. This is the way I earn a living. I had to pay the bills. I had rent. I had electricity. I had food to pay. I had obligations, the same as all of us have. This is what I do to pay those bills. Therefore, this is what I was doing. This individual threatened me, and I acted.
She had the gun.
Yes,
She went into his car.
yes,
She drank some alcohol with him.
yes,
It pulled over.
yes,
She killed him,
yes,
and she took his stuff.
yes, she did.
And nevertheless, you're telling us her capacity was substantially impaired.
In my clinical opinion, given everything that makes up Ms. Wuornos at that moment and today, yes.
How do you square those actions with her impairment?
First of all, I would say that the very fact that, given her lifestyle, shows poor judgment. It shows an inability to cope adequately in the world and with the world. It shows impulsivity. It shows very poor skills. So just given the fact that she's out on the road hitchhiking and making her way in the world as a prostitute. Secondly, she's now in this situation, and as she perceives this individual, they are harming her, hurting her physically, and threatening to hurt her worse in a few minutes or in a little while. And she becomes very, very frightened. And then when she has the moment to free herself or get herself physically free, sees no other way but to act in the manner in which she did, with different psychodynamics, with an intact brain that could operate differently, does operate differently, does not interact with her personality disorder. Might she have figured out a different way to get out of that situation, given that she was in it? Probably. But given her dynamics and given her history and given her view of the world and given her cortical dysfunction, in my clinical opinion, that was the only way that Ms. Wuornos perceived of getting out of the situation, of saving herself in essence.
Had she had weapons on occasions prior to the killing of Mr. Mallory in her life?
Yes,
Had she ever shot anyone prior to being with Mr. Mallory,
herself,
other than herself?
not to my knowledge.
Have you been able to formulate an opinion as to whether the emotional difficulties and disturbances we've been talking about affected Ms. Wuornos when she was with Mr. Mallory?
In my clinical opinion, they did.
At the time she was with Mr. Mallory, did she suffer from an extreme mental or emotional disturbance?
In my clinical opinion, she did then and does now.
The perceptions that you're talking about that Ms. Wuornos has, when formulating your opinion as to those perceptions, does it matter if Mr. Mallory did any of the things Ms. Wuornos said she did, that he did?
It matters to the extent that if he did none of them, and she is so firmly entrenched in her belief that he did, then my clinical diagnosis would change, and I would say we're dealing with a psychotic individual. Now, what generally occurs with folks like this is that there is some truth. May not be all. What truth there is gets distorted, but there is truth. And then their perceptions of that as it interacts with their dynamics and their ability to keep using the word self-talk, to work things through in their head, as we all do, as we cognitively solve a problem and reach a solution. Her impairment in that area and her psychodynamics make that would make those distortions greater. So in that sense, yeah, it's important in the sense that if none of that happened, then I think we're dealing with somebody who's psychotic. And I don't think, my clinical perception of Ms. Wuornos is she's not psychotic.
What is psychotic, just to find that term for us?
Basically out of touch with reality, someone who's lives in a world that is different from the consensually valid world that most of us would agree upon and live in most of the time.
What if Mr. Mallory did nothing and she's just lying about it?
That is inconsistent with the test material and what we know about people who suffer from these impairments. I have observed the videotape. I have heard Ms. Wuornos tell me about these incidents in March. I found both of those times to be somewhat confusing. I found it very difficult to follow her in March. I even asked her to draw me diagrams, and when she got through the diagrams, I couldn't follow them either. I found her thinking very loose, very non-sequential. I just had a very difficult time trying to interview her in March, and that's one of the reasons that I decided to let her sort of dry out, and I would come back and try it again in a few months. I did that, and in the meantime, I had access to some materials that she had written for her attorney. I read those, and Ms. Wuornos did not know that I had read them. I went and interviewed her, and she gave me an entirely different story, but a story that matched the account she had given to her attorney back in June. This was now in December. I have read 2 other accounts that she gave in January, and they essentially match. I'm not saying that it's verbatim. It's not. If it were verbatim, I'd be very concerned about it. But in essence, what she's saying is the same. There are details that are the same. Maybe minor rearrangements of them, but there are details that are the same. In my clinical judgment, if Ms. Wuornos did not believe that it happened, I'm not saying whether it happened or it didn't happen, but if she did not believe that it happened, she could not, with her memory impairment, give the same story 6 months later and then another month after that. And I did not hear what she said in court the other day, so I don't know what she said.
And you've reviewed accounts that she's given to other doctors, have you not?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I reviewed 2 others that she gave in January, both of those in January, plus her accounts to me in December and January, and the account that she had given earlier in June, which she did not know that I had access, that I had read.
Irrespective of her view of Mr. Mallory and the specific details, do all of the accounts have a common theme that she perceived herself to be threatened?
Yes, and that includes back in March and...
Hello, Sue, by the pool. How are you? Getting ready to be by your pool. I'm so jealous. How you doing? What channel is this? This one. It's the it's the frog channel, Zach. Wait. You don't think Baker knows what he was sending his viewers to raid? Hello, Baker. Thank you for the raid and welcome all you Baker raiders. We are in the penalty phase of Aileen Wuornos. And this is a psychologist who was talking about how messed up that woman's life was. Spoiler alert. Hello, Brandon. How are you? How are you doing? Baker's drunk? Awesome. I had to read Zach. I read that wrong, Baker. I thought it said, Zach, I'm in a mood. By the way, Baker, you tell Expert I'm looking for him. You told me he was looking for me. I sent him a message, and he never messaged me back. I know he's been a little busy. She got put on day shift. She is at work. And she's very, very happy. Day 2 on day shift. A normal life. He's in a mood too. The only person, Brandon, the only person that deserves to be timed out in my stream knows who he is. I know he's not, but I messaged him before and he's messaged me back. And I just was putting it on the record that I messaged him. Just so Baker knew that I did. How did you get here? Oh, sorry, Wrestler's Mom. You know how those phone calls can time travel you. And hello, Maria Miles. I don't know. I never said who it was. You just outed yourself. Thanks, Baker. Have a good dinner. He was? Huh. Well, sir, expert, you're looking for me? I'm looking for you. Thanks, Zach. He really timed me out the other day. So, for those of you that are just joining us, once again, we are going over the 1992 trial of Aileen Wuornos, also known as Monster from the movie of that name. We are in the penalty phase. She's been found guilty of all charges. And I see what you're looking at, Brandon. She might. I think I see what you're looking at. Now you've got me thinking jazz hands. I don't know. Anyway, this is the first witness up for the defense on whether or not she should be unalived by the state. And she is a psychologist. Yes, she was self-defending. What she said. Yes, please. Thank you, Zach. I'm kind of good at that, Sue. I don't even mean to. But it's a gift. Thank you, Maria Miles. I appreciate that. Well, she died October 23rd, 2024. So she lost the battle completely. The witness. Well, thank you, Wrestler's Mom. I appreciate that. This state is in Florida. This case is in Florida. This is Aileen Wuornos. She is on trial for one unaliving of Richard Mallory. She's also known as the first female serial unaliver, but she's not, because we've covered other ones on this that were way before her. But that's what she's known for. And she only went on trial for one unaliving, which is this one. She pled no contest or guilty to the other, I think, 6 that she confessed to. She had a very, very hard life. We've been kind of talking about that back and forth. None of us are excusing what she's done. Gabby, jump in if you feel like it. But she didn't know who her dad was. She didn't find, they were divorced before she was born. Her dad was in prison. He unalived himself. He self-deleted. Mom was an alcoholic, left to go out to dinner one night, left her and her brother at home, called her parents and said, come get them. So her, Aileen, and her brother, they were raised by her grandparents, didn't know that they were their grandparents, and didn't know that their aunt and uncle weren't their brother and sister. Grandpa liked Aileen a little too much in a wrong way, which is gross. Then at 14, she was essayed by one of Grandpa's friends. Took her to the woods, offered her beer, had a weapon. And that's important because that's what happened when she unalived these other 6 or 7 men. I can't remember. They were always in secluded wooded areas. There was alcohol involved. She was working as a lady of the night, and then something would happen and she would unalive them. So we're not excusing her, but as the result of the grape, she became pregnant. She didn't tell anybody until she was 6 months along. They send her away to, I don't even think, sorry, Brandon. I don't even think these places exist anymore, but they sent her to a place for unwed mothers. All I can think of now is we put them on MTV, not condemning anybody who had a child young. I had my kids young, but anyway, not that young. She gives the child up for adoption. Nobody knows where that child is. I think it was a boy. Thank goodness. Hopefully they've had a very normal life. But she worked as a lady of the night from the time she was kicked out at age 14 or 15, this doctor says, until she was 20. And that was traveling from Michigan, where she was raised, to Colorado, to Florida, where she ended up. I'm surprised that she even survived that, being on the road with truck drivers. And also, as everybody here has heard me say a ton, I don't care who you are, if she's 14 and I don't care if she's offering it, I don't care if you're paying her, it's still wrong. At 14, at 15, at 16, at 17, it's wrong. 18 is still pushing it, but at least she's legal. She just went through a lot, and it's just, nobody here is giving her any excuse for doing what she did, because she did not have any reason to unalive anybody, or any excuse to unalive anybody. But she just didn't stand a chance. She had 0 chances. You were just making excuses for a guy. I think we can have some sympathy. It's just, it's hard not to. It's just, I don't know. Flashman thought she should have went free, and none of us think that. We just think that she had issues. It was a horrible life, just everything she went through. And this woman, what she's talking about now is how Aileen viewed the world. She reacted to it constantly. She was always reacting to it, and she couldn't really ever take responsibility if she did something. It was never her fault. It was always somebody else's fault. If you're talking about Aileen, Brandon, no, you could not release that.
Zach, no one tells Flashman to shut up. You know what I gotta do now, right?
It scared the crap out of me. I was like, what is happening? Uh-oh. Bye, Zach. See you in, 10 minutes?
I got your back, Flashman.
Picked on the wrong person, Zach. All right. So, Jazz Hands casting a spell, arthritis lady, whatever you guys want to call her. Dr. Elizabeth McMahon is her name. And she should almost be up for cross-examination, and I'm looking forward to the state. Yes, I think Zach is in a timeout now. 60 seconds, 10 minutes, whatever. All right, I'm going back to Zach, you're grounded. Wasn't for me, Zach. I still owe you.
In February, when I first saw her, and at least my perceptions of the taped confession, all of those times, that's consistent, that she is saying, I acted in self-defense.
While Ms. Wuornos was hitchhiking, making her living as a prostitute, had she been abused on the road?
Yes, according to her, she had. Now, keep in mind, there are two separate times she made her primary living as a prostitute. One was from the ages of 15 to 20. During that time, she spoke of having been gang raped when she was either 17 or 18. Stated that she had willingly gone to a party, had willingly ingested some alcohol, but not willingly been tied to bed and raped. She had then not from the ages of 20 to 28, she did other kinds of work and did not work primarily as a prostitute, though she prostituted some of the time. From 28 until she was arrested, she was primarily a prostitute. During that time, she related basically 5 instances which she terms rape. 2 of them are with individuals that did not have a weapon, did not threaten her in any way, did not hurt her in any way.
And yes, for all of you that have not seen this, that's the jury sitting over there that they're looking at right now. They show them often and close up. It's weird. And that's the little court reporter sitting right there, which is also weird. Just because we're not used to it today. And she can also read stuff back immediately, which is nice. Something we're missing today.
According to what she told me. She terms it rape because, and this took me a while to figure out with Ms. Wuornos. When I first asked her to define rape, one of the ways that she defined it was that somebody hurts or does something against your will or injures you in some way. The other thing is that they have sex and don't pay you. Now, what I later realized was that Ms. Wuornos has a consistent way of functioning with her clients, and that is that they must pay her first. So if she's saying they had sex without paying me, it's because they didn't pay her. She refused and said, I'm not going to have sex with you. And they insisted and in some way forced her to anyway. So the having sex without paying means that it was against her will because the fact they hadn't paid her, she was saying, no, I won't do this. These 2 individuals, she said, she just got angry and verbalized, yelled at them in some abusive manner, verbally abusive manner, but didn't do anything. Said she had a gun with her, but did not use it because they had not hurt her in any way. She sort of felt sorry for them, and she just was verbally abusive and let them go on their way. The other 3 times she related to me twice that, and according to the notes is related to other people, that she had in one case, I think it was tear gas, in one case mace, and in one case something else, something equivalent to that. In each of those cases that was taken away from her and in essence used against her in some way. And one time a shotgun was held out on her. The other times the individuals had a weapon, but I can't remember, I'm sorry what that was. I'd have to look at my notes. But at any rate, that she was forced to have sex and that she was very frightened and begged for her life.
Hey, Brandon Lesko, in my defense, I have never timed anybody out. And I have never, had never been timed out until the other day in Valhalla stream when Zach abused his mod powers and timed me out for no reason other than he could. So I will be building a case against him. Thanks for the idea.
That is just so rude, Zach. Brandon, you want me to just time him out one more time? I can't believe Zach.
I have never timed you out, Flashman.
No.
I have. You, and me. I'm glad I'm in great company. Brandy Churchwell, Baker and the Expert, awesome. And me. And I'm gonna, thank you. Thank you for including me. Where is Maria Miles going? Be lurking while cleaning my cat. Aw. Well, she's only 2? Look at you. You're being a great pet owner. Well, good luck. That's sad.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. This one. Oh wait, not that one. This one. Their facial expressions are very stern. Pretty
Please.
sure one of them carries a ruler in their purse.
Who?
I was
The
telling her
jurors?
how you get crystal clear pictures of them, close-ups of their face and everything.
I do not have a dare. I do not have my finger on the button. Gabby does.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. She hasn't timed me out. I've never timed anybody out. I was in shock when I was timed out the other day.
No, Flashman, you timed yourself out the other day. Remember that? That was hilarious.
Oh my gosh. I don't think it's fair. Aileen is allowed to bring up all the other times she was raped, but prosecutor can't bring up she unalived him. But they did. They did bring up. They had the whole trial after kind of the first day was about all her other victims. Maybe not like completely how much prosecutors wanted it to be about them, but we didn't hear about Richard Mallory much after the first day or two. Yeah, I don't know. Zach, I'm not going to ask why you are saying your pants are all the way up, but okay, good for you. You're a big boy. Okay. Your pocket has been timed out. I don't know what's happening right now, Gabby.
Yeah.
Nobody knows where.
Let's go show.
Yes, nobody knows where the pants go during the timeout.
Oh, man.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Deep breath. I didn't. You started, Flashman. I'll just say that this time. I'm gonna pull a Flashman and say you started it. Oh, yep. Credibility. Bye-bye now. See ya. You have been around all week. That's all right. It's okay. It's all about this talk in the woods. But, Bri, that's where everything always happened to her. Well, that's where the one big thing happened to her that set her off on this thing. So then she goes back to the woods, to use a bad word, she got triggered.
Or like
She
Adair
got
likes
triggered.
to say, the
Happy.
ouch, the zipper hurt effect.
Yeah, I was trying to be really careful there. Because it would hurt. I was like, yeah, there's some truth to that one. I don't know how to say it. I guess I just did. Oh, pocket pool would. I got it. Bri, sorry. There's a lot going on right now. It's windy outside. Yes, she got triggered, and unfortunately, they did too. Not laughing at that. That's why Gabby's hanging out with me in case my electricity goes out all of a sudden. Then she can shut my stream down.
Flashman.
That's for you to find out, Flashman. I'm not telling. I'm hidden play. She's got to be almost done.
She related that those two instances that occurred in the late 80s, I think 88 and 89, and then those three instances where she was scared and begging for life, and the other two instances that occurred within the 6 months before Mr. Mallory.
Ms. Wuornos' perceptions of the world and people around her, are those a product of the dysfunctions and impairments you've been speaking about?
and her early life, everything. I mean, we are a product of every day that's gone before us. And, you know, our psychodynamics and our cognitive abilities to cope. So all of those,
You talked about some of the projective tests that you gave Ms. Wuornos.
yes.
Let me show something to opposing counsel, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Show it to the doctor after. Doctor, let me show you a document that's been marked as Defense Exhibit C for identification, and let me ask you to just take a look at that and tell us what that is.
That is the last picture that Ms. Wuornos drew during the time that I asked. It's a group of pictures called their projected drawings. I asked a person to draw a house, a tree, a person of the opposite sex. Kinetic family drawing, meaning draw me a picture of what was typical for you in your home when you were growing up. Your most unpleasant concept, your most pleasant concept, and then anything you like. This is what she drew when we got to anything you like.
And she drew that as part of your testing.
Yes,
That was in response to just draw whatever you want to draw.
whatever you like, yes.
And published, move the exhibit into evidence and publish
Objection,
it.
Your Honor, if they're relevant. If you take a look at it, you will see that there's no relevance to it, other than it was try to force sympathy.
I want to see the picture.
This is one of them for identification.
We're moving it at this time, Your Honor. Did you rely on those projective test results in formulating your opinion, Doctor?
Yeah, they received working out the proper number of things.
Thank you, Your Honor. If I may publish the items of jury judgment.
Lone juror, they never allow in the jury box. Are you talking about the attorney, Gabby?
Yeah, he looks like Doogie Howser.
He does look like he's 12. Me too. You would think my circle was like a circle of aggression. Because I can't
While the
draw.
jury is looking at the item, what did the projective test tell you about Ms. Wuornos?
They told me that I was dealing with an individual who was not psychotic, who wasn't in touch with reality.
I'm sorry, who was?
Was not psychotic, who was in touch with reality. Who deals at the level of very primitive, basic needs, who has a potential for better interpersonal relationships, but whose perceptions of people are very distantiated. By that I mean, she has to distance people away. They're in the forms of angels, wizards, ghosts. In other words, they're distantiated. They're not human people. Most of which are malevolent. That her affect is overwhelms her cognition oftentimes. By that I mean that when she gets emotionally aroused, her ability to make good judgments goes out the window. That she sees the world as extremely conflictual, and again, malevolent, with things that, again, evil spirits, ghosts, things that are beyond our face-to-face control, beyond our ability to interact with in a predictable manner. Paranoid, that is, that people are out to get her, if you will. A lot of depression, a lot of unmet affectional needs for affection and just basic closeness, basic human warmth lacking. angry, some what we would call bizarre thinking. That's more in terms of distortions of perceptions, not to the point of being psychotic, but that their perceptions do get distorted. And a person who's angry, distrustful, suspicious of the world.
Was the result of the projective testing consistent with the borderline personality disorder and the cortical dysfunction from which Ms. Wuornos suffered and has suffered from the time she was a child?
The projective testing or procedures assessment does not, in general, give us a sense of the cortical dysfunction. It's not its purpose, and so that's not what we get. In terms of the borderline functioning, yes. And her clinical presentation is that. And by that, I'm saying that before I even scored any of the material, I simply had the first interaction I had with Ms. Wuornos and walked out of the detention facility. My sense was that Ms. Wuornos was a borderline personality. I guess the testing buttressed the clinical presentation.
Thank you, Doctor. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Please report, Squire.
All right, time for the state cross-examination. Here it
Also,
comes.
that nose whistle has been happening the entire trial. And I've been trying to figure out whose nose is whistling.
I wonder if it's a judge.
It might be.
He's not that far from
No.
He's been shrinking this entire trial. He's not that far from the microphone. He might be under it by now.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure he's fallen asleep at least 10 times.
I can't believe that I'm just now hearing it, because now it's driving me crazy. And whoever's chair, whenever they lean back, and it's like,
yeah.
Stop it. It's so loud. All right, she's staring him down already. Yep, no, Chrissy, I was with you. I just now heard it. Gabby, can't believe you haven't said anything before now. Had to be driving you nuts. Oh, that's mine. What? It is not Haley. She's not nose whistling.
Dr. McMahon, would you tell us in your expert opinion whether or not the defendant is legally insane?
My clinical opinion, she is not.
Tell us in your clinical opinion whether or not the defendant knows the difference between right and wrong.
In my clinical opinion, in most instances, yes. In times of extreme affective disorganization, I don't think it's something that she would be maybe able to work through cognitively, but in general. Does she know the difference between right and wrong? She knows the difference between right and wrong as a general thing.
She understands the difference between right and wrong, the nature and the consequences of her actions. Isn't that true?
In my clinical opinion, she does. Yes.
Does not meet the legal definition of insanity.
In my clinical opinion, she does not.
She did not meet the legal definition of insanity on the morning of December the 1st, 1989. Is that not true?
I'm sorry, the date is, are you saying
On the
when
date
Mr.
that Mr. Mallory was shown.
In my clinical opinion, she did not meet, would not have met the conditions of the requirements of the McMahon rule.
So under the law of the state of Florida, as you understand it, she was legally sane at that time.
In my clinical opinion, she was, yes, sir.
And she knew when she shot Richard Mallory over and over and over again that what she was doing was wrong, legally.
At that moment, I do not think that that was a relevant or even a consideration for her.
So then you say that Lee Wuornos is not responsible for her actions on that morning.
No, I'm not saying she's not responsible.
Well, Doctor,
I think she's responsible.
For you to arrive at that conclusion, you have to believe what Lee Wuornos tells you happened.
That's correct.
And you're aware that this jury has already rejected Lee Wuornos' account of that.
That's correct.
Now, you have a
That's
different,
not Lee Wuornos' perception. Okay?
Well,
I understand
truth has nothing to
they
do with it,
found
is
her.
that right?
Your Honor, if the witness can answer.
Sorry, I want to interrupt. The truth of what really happened out there doesn't matter to your diagnosis, does it?
As I've explained before,
No, ma'am. Does it? Yes or
If the
no?
witness can answer, Your Honor.
Calls for a yes or no, Your Honor. That's what should be required.
it matters insofar as if it is at great variance with Ms. Wuornos' perceptions, then we're dealing with a psychotic individual. If it is not at great variance, then no, it doesn't matter in the sense that what is determinative of each of our behaviors is our perceptions. And
So
if
you believe that-
perception is in accord with reality, then I have to say she's sane.
So she was sane, she knew the difference between right and wrong on that one. You're not saying she was insane.
I'm not saying,
That's an answer, Your Honor.
And she understood the nature and the consequences of actions then and now. Is that not true?
in my clinical opinion, she did and does,
And she did before that date.
as far as I know.
Now, the fact that someone has a borderline personality dysfunction doesn't make them a killer, does it?
Does that make them a killer? Not in and of itself.
According to Lee Wuornos' account, the defendant's account to you of her life, she claimed never to have killed anyone before. Is that not true?
That's true.
And you say that she had this borderline personality dysfunction at the age of 15.
Yes,
So this cortical dysfunction, which you described she had at 15,
yes,
and this borderline personality dysfunction, which she had at the age of 15,
yes.
is not something that drove her to kill people at the age of 15, according to her account.
Did that drive her to kill someone at the age of
Would-
15?
would someone
Not as
suffer-
far as I know.
So someone then suffering with this mental dysfunction, as you described,
Mhm.
would not be driven to kill because they suffered from that specific dysfunction, as you
Wait
described.
a minute, that's different than what you just said.
Well, doctor, my question is,
Your Honor, if the witness can answer.
she's not answering my question.
Make no rule if there was one.
Doctor, Lee Wuornos told you she'd never killed anyone before, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's your testimony to this jury that Lee Wuornos suffered from the same condition when she was 15 years of age as she suffers today. Isn't that correct?
She's suffering from that right now. She's not killing anyone right this minute.
Because
She
she's
will suffer
incarcerated,
for it.
doctor.
She will suffer from that condition as long as she lives.
So
in my clinical opinion.
So there's really no hope of ever helping Lee Wuornos as far as rehabilitation. She'll have this the rest of her life.
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope. Objection,
No rule.
beyond the
Isn't that true?
So we might as well offer because we can't fix her. Wow. Okay. I don't like his line of questioning.
Doctor?
beyond the scope of the sentencing proceeding, Your Honor.
Isn't that true, doctor, that she's had it, she has it now, and she'll always have it?
That's not the question you just asked me. The question you just asked me is that she could not, never be helped. Two different things. She will always be a borderline personality. Is there a potential that she could ever be helped to live more adaptively? There is a potential. It's low. It's not, they're not good prognostically. They're not real good for therapeutic, not good, what's the word? The prognosis is not real good therapeutically for borderline personalities. They're very, very difficult to deal with. And with somebody as primitive as Lee, it would be very difficult. Is it possible? It's possible.
Okay, in the possible, it's possible for me to be the next man on the moon, but it's not probable, is it?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Doctor, answer it then.
Judge, I'd ask that the court direct the witness whether to answer, not
All
counsel.
right, I will rule the objection.
Isn't that what we're talking about here, doctor? In the real world, we have no real possibility of her ever changing because of what you say is her borderline personality dysfunction and cortical dysfunction.
No, I am not saying that there's no real possibility of her changing in the real world. There is. Okay? The probability is low. Is there a possibility? Yes. Is there a probability? Yes. It would take somebody who's going to deal with her intensively?
24 hours a day,
No,
7 days a week.
no. 3 times a week? Yes. She would need 3 times a week with somebody who is very good at dealing with borderlines.
So in other words, someone that would sit down and counsel with her, would be able to explain to her the improprieties of her ways, and she'd be able to then simply turn a new leaf. Is that what you're telling us?
Well, I wish therapy were that simple.
So we're talking about in the real world then. She would not be able to turn that leaf.
No, you keep asking the same question over again. That's
You
not
keep
what
answering
I'm
in different
saying.
ways, doctor.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it is possible. There's a low probability.
Just ask questions, do argue.
Yes, sir. Every account that you have of Lee Wuornos' family background is primarily from her, is it not? When you talk about the rape, you say that you read an account by her sister,
Yes.
but that sister's account is based upon what Lee Wuornos told her about the rape, isn't it?
I have no idea where her sister got it.
Okay, so you don't know whether or not that's a self-reporting of Lee Wuornos telling her that I was raped.
No, I don't know that. All I know is that her sister said she was raped at an early age.
You don't know whether that's accurate or not, do you?
No, I wasn't there.
But you accept that as true, do you not? Because Lee Wuornos told you it was true.
Well, I don't have any reason not to accept it. Let's put it that way.
Well, doctor, you don't know whether it's true or not, do you?
In the sense of was I there? No, I don't know that.
And you don't know whether or not Lee Wuornos had lied to his sister when she claimed that she had been raped.
If that's how the only way her sister knew it, then no, I don't know that.
And you don't know whether 6 months after she found herself to be pregnant, when she was at her home and she had to explain the pregnancy, it was easier for her to lie about being raped than it was Barry Brody, her sister, and she had Barry Wuornos, her sister. When I say sisters, her aunts and uncles, actually.
Right.
So there was a family unit there, wasn't there?
That wasn't me. It was probably just Court TV saying, shut up, because it's line of questioning. Take Aileen Wuornos out of this. I hate this line of questioning. If you're sitting there and you are a victim of that, how painful is that to sit and listen to? I am? It doesn't say that I am. That's fine for you. I don't know, Flashman. Not now. I don't know. It's probably because it could feel my anger. Just because I look at this, like I said, take her out of it, and it's probably just being a woman. Well, the whole thing glitched for a second on Court TV. I don't know, but I don't like this line of questioning because it's like if she really was a victim, that's really bad. She was 14, so if an adult did it to her, she was a victim of that, even if she was willing at 14. I don't know. If I was a juror, if I was that woman in the purple on the end, I would get up and smack him.
Yes.
And there was interaction
Yes.
between that family unit.
Of some type, yes.
And
And
isn't-
then she was fortunate to have the family unit.
And isn't it the fact that the defendant told you that her grandfather, the most hideous thing he ever did to her was try to keep her from being truant and from running away, and he would ground her? And on occasion, strike her with a belt to stop her from running away and being truant?
No,
Well, doctor, do we need to go through your notes?
that's fine. The worst thing that he ever did, according to her, was to strike her in the face with a belt buckle.
And didn't she tell you that was an accident because she had run away from home and she was truant from school, and as he was trying to discipline her, the belt buckle accidentally hit her? Please refer to your notes, doctor, of your interview.
Do you know which day? Right offhand?
There's so many things wrong with that sentence.
Try March 8th, doctor.
March 8th?
Here's it. First page. Under discipline, accidentally struck once in the face with a ball. We have a 1X by.
Right,
One occasion in 15 years of her living at home with her grandfather.
right. Well,
Isn't that what you say, doctor?
yes,
Isn't that what the defendant related to you?
at that time, yes.
Well, did she relate other things to you that were different from that at a later time?
I think I asked her to go in, at some point, I asked her to go into that a little bit more in
And she changed her
detail.
story, did she not?
I don't know that she changed her story.
Well, with time, did
No.
she give you a different story, a different account
On January 8th,
of this year?
yes.
Her story became more magnified, didn't it, as to the system?
Your Honor, if the witness could be allowed to answer something.
Your Honor, I didn't,
Doctor, feel free to refresh your recollection.
I asked her with regard to the physical discipline. She said her father would give her a licking And that he used a belt, but only on the butt or the legs, and to the point of bruising. That's all. It said that she had fought with him, and that's when he struck her on the back and in the face with a belt buckle. He told that her father told everybody he, quote, hated my guts, unquote. I asked her why, and she said she didn't know, but perhaps because she was Diane's daughter. Now, that's compatible with the earlier things that she said in the interview that you were quoting.
This is all her self-reporting to you, though, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't it a fact that primarily everything that Lee Wuornos you accepted as fact for your family history?
If it coincided with other things that,
No, doctor, my
That
question
other
is, did
things
you
that-
not accept what she told you?
Your Honor, objection, please, until it gets been answered.
Better answer the question, sir.
I'd ask that you be responsive, Your Honor.
So better answer the question than the argument on its bad.
those things that coincided with other accounts.
So in other words, you read the statements of Lori Grody and Barry Wuornos.
Yes.
Isn't it a fact that in both Lori Grody's statements and Barry Wuornos' statements, they indicate that her father rarely disciplined Aileen Wuornos?
Okay. Barry states that, and
Doctor,
at the same time
Judge, I'd
states
ask
he
the
wasn't
witness
home.
Respond.
She's responding as best she knows how, and you just asked best you know how.
That he had left when she was 9, 10, so that he wasn't even there.
Doctor, isn't it a fact that Barry Wuornos said that his father disciplined her minimally as compared to the other children?
The same as the other children, I think is what he said. That she and Keith were brought into the home, and the question was, were they treated any differently? And I think Barry said, no, they weren't.
And Barry Wuornos said that his father did not mistreat him.
Did not mistreat him?
That's correct.
I think that's correct, that he
Did not mistreat the other children.
That was his perception.
And then Mr. Barry Wuornos, the uncle, raised as the brother of this defendant, also indicate that when his father drank, he sat in the easy chair and he would fall asleep and not bother the children.
Yeah, that was his testimony, and that was his statement, testimony statement.
And as a fact, when you read Lori Grody's statement of their family history,
Mhm.
she verified the same account that Barry Wuornos gave, did she not? And wasn't that significantly different than what Aileen Wuornos claimed to be her family background?
As well as others, yes.
So there were many accounts that Aileen Wuornos gave you about what was happening in her family life as she grew up. It was different than what Lori Grody and Barry Wuornos said is happening in that family.
Different than them, theirs, and compatible with some others.
The reports by Ms. Wuornos to you, these are all self-reports, are they not? In other words, you're talking to her and she talks to you.
Right.
When you were first introduced to her, you were told by her defense attorney, and she was told in your presence that you were there as a confidential expert, were you not?
Objection, Your Honor, to any discussion involving counsel.
Goes to the perception of the defendant as to why she was giving this material, the bias of this witness also.
Withdraw the last one.
Counsel's objection.
Withdraw the last question. Let that question be answered. Withdraw. Just the area we reject.
Would you repeat the question?
But- What was your understanding of your reasons for being there to interview Ms. Wuornos?
To evaluate her with regard to her mental status at the time of this offense, her competency to stand trial, and whatever her mental condition was at the time.
And in your presence, wasn't she told that you were there to help her?
To help her?
Yes.
Not that I recall.
Did you tell her that you were there as a confidential expert and that nothing that she said to you could be used unless she chose and her defense attorneys chose to allow it to be heard?
No, that is not what I told her.
What did you tell her?
I told her that my clinical opinion was not a matter of confidentiality, that the facts of the case would be a matter of confidentiality unless they were given by some other means, and that my report would go to her attorney. And if her attorney felt that in some way it would be beneficial to her legal situation, I was then subpoenable by the state attorney's office.
Then and only then, if your report was favorable to the defendant?
Could help the-
Would it be made known?
Could help the defendant in some fashion. Yes.
And your intention is to help the defendant, is it not?
No, my intention is to render an as thorough an evaluation as I possibly can, to find out as much as I possibly can about this individual, and to arrive at the conclusions and answer the questions I'm asked to answer as thoroughly and completely as I possibly can.
So in the first
That's my
interview,
intention.
in the first interview that you had with this defendant, she didn't tell you anything about being raped by anyone, did she?
No, I didn't ask anything.
She didn't tell you though, did she?
I don't know. I honestly don't know, because I didn't take any notes. All I did was test them.
You don't recall whether or not Ms. Wuornos, the first time you met her, was claiming that she'd been raped by Richard Mallory or another man?
I don't recall.
And then on March the 8th, when you met her the second time, she never made any claims that Richard Mallory raped her, did she?
No, she did not.
It wasn't until almost 9-10 months later, at your next interview, where that story now was that Richard Mallory had raped her?
In June, she had written out some material for her
I
attorney.
asked your next interview, when you met her next.
Oh, my interview,
Yes,
yes, December.
So we have a space of what, from March the 8th,
Mhm.
starting in February to March the 8th, and then to December. So it took the defendant from your first interview in February until December of that year to recount to you that she had been raped by Richard Mallory.
I didn't see her between those, so yes.
Well, you had the opportunity to see her if you chose to do so, didn't you?
That's not the point. I didn't see her, so she didn't have the opportunity to tell me any differently. She did tell her attorney differently in June,
Doctor,
maybe before that.
if you
I
had
don't know.
chosen to interview her, you could have, could you not, over
Of
the space
course.
of a year?
Of course. But
And
you're
so-
saying it took her that long to tell me, only because I wasn't present. She
Doctor,
couldn't tell me if I hadn't been present.
isn't it true that in the first two interviews, she never told you anything about being raped?
That's true.
In fact, her story expanded with time, did it not, as to what had happened to her?
You mean between when I first saw her and all the rest of the times?
Yes, ma'am?
Yes.
Now, Doctor, in your preparation for your testimony, what other witnesses did you speak with, other than the defendant?
Talked very briefly by phone with a cousin, some distant cousin, who was on his way from someplace, Miami to Michigan, and talked with a gentleman who said that he had picked Ms. Wuornos up in May of 1990 and spent 6 days with her, 5 days with her.
Now, so you spoke with no other family members of Ms. Wuornos about her childhood and her family upbringing?
Other than the cousin.
Well, the cousin lived in the house with her?
Visited frequently, did not reside, but visited frequently. Apparently her grandfather was a favorite uncle.
Did you speak with Lori Grody?
No,
Did you try?
no,
Did you speak with Barry Wuornos?
no,
Did you try?
no,
Did you speak with Ty Moore, who had lived with the defendant for the past 4.5 years prior to her arrest?
no.
Did you try?
Didn't feel it was necessary.
It wouldn't be necessary to speak with someone that had lived with her day in and day out for 4.5 years before this offense?
I had 2 sworn statements and a lengthy deposition.
So you chose not to speak with her to confirm what was taken in the statements?
I didn't speak with her.
You chose not to? Say yes or no, Doctor?
At some point, I remember talking with the defense attorney about would she be
That's not my-
available. And so
Doctor,
when I
did
say
you-
chose
Your
not
Honor,
to,
if the witness demands.
Judge, she's simply not being responsive.
All right, just let her answer.
I'm trying to think what the response was. Whether, at that time, I know she was not available, or I was told she was not available.
Doctor, did you ever request of anyone in the state attorney's office to speak with Tom?
No,
You could have done that if you chose to do so. couldn't you?
Your Honor, I object. That's improper.
They weren't gonna argue with you. Please, just ask her a question.
Now, Doctor, the picture that you described for the jury of what the defendant was doing when she went hitchhiking and drinking and using drugs, that's all her self-representation of that account, is it not?
yes, it is.
And then during that period of time, she had this personality dysfunction as you described it?
Yes,
But it didn't cause her to kill anyone as she described.
I'm sorry?
It didn't cause her to kill anyone as she described.
Not at that time, no.
Did she describe to you her criminal history?
Yes.
She described to you in that criminal history other acts of violence or theft?
Or what?
Or theft?
Yes. Theft.
Did you consider her criminal history? I'm sorry.
Can I have just a moment?
Yes, ma'am.
Not to the borderline person.
Was the big puffy haired woman the our cereal coffer?
That was so ridiculous. I was like, that sounded just like a seal. What is happening to this person?
Because there's the hair passed. That was all that we saw was the hair.
It was so ridiculous.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm getting a visit. Yes, the juror badges are humongous. and they're yellow, so some people would not like them because they don't like yellow. Yes, she had all kinds of mental issues, and as much as I did not, sorry, my Hank's in here yawning, I'm boring him. As much as I didn't like what he started with, question-wise, sir. She doesn't look good now about people she didn't talk to. I wish you would just let her answer the questions, but I don't where he's at right now. Why did you not talk to Ty more? Well, we can't really get an answer out of her because he won't give her the chance, and she really is not answering the question. But so
And they're distracted by the seal, obviously.
there's that. I don't know if you can get that, if you can pull that one off either, Zach. A woman voice or Louis Armstrong's voice is probably a hard one to do for a flash fan. Either way. And yes, flash fan, I agree. Someone needs to go to the hospital, and maybe that's where the puffy-haired woman was on the way to. That was some hair, man. All right, I'm going to mute since he's just click-clacking around over here.
Personality, no. Not to my diagnosis.
Whether she committed offenses that dealt with crimes of honesty or dishonesty would have nothing to do with you.
No,
Whether or not she had stolen items from other individuals and used alias names that have no relevance to you.
no. Not arriving at a diagnosis, no.
Isn't the fact, doctor, that the defendant provided you with a history of manipulation and lies to people and everyone around her?
Manipulation, yes. Lies, no.
Because you believe her.
It's internally consistent, and it's consistent with other things, externally consistent.
Is that a yes or a no, doctor?
That's a yes for most of the time.
So you believed her when it suited you, and you disbelieved her when it didn't suit you?
No, I believed her when it was internally and externally consistent. I questioned her when it was not.
So you were looking inside her internally, and that somehow gave you some input as to whether you're telling the truth or not? She said it was internally and externally existent. I'm trying to understand what she means. Were you looking internally into her somehow? That gives you some basis?
There's internal consistency in the sense of to what someone is saying. It's either internally consistent, in other words, what they say from one time to the next time, from this hour to that hour, to the different ways I ask the questions. Or it isn't, and it's externally consistent in terms of, well, it's also internally consistent with the diagnosis and their dynamics. It's externally consistent or not with test results, with other, like the cortical dysfunction, with their school records, that sort of thing.
Well, doctor, isn't it a fact you told the jury that you watched her confession tape?
Yes,
On 3.5 hours.
yes,
And during the course of listening to that tape, you hear her make various statements to the law enforcement officers as to why she killed each of these men?
yes,
Did you hear her say that one guy had a weapon with him? He had a .45 caliber. It was dark. He didn't know where he put it. This is the weapon that I sold, and I don't know where he put it, but I didn't know he had a weapon. See, I had no idea he had a weapon. But when he started shitting me, that's when I grabbed my gun and started shooting. Remember that statement that you made?
Do I remember that she made that statement? No, I will take your word for it. I do not remember everything on 3.5 hours worth of tape. I will assume that you're reading it correctly.
Well, did you consider, would you like to see a transcript?
No.
Did you consider that that account varied or changed when you heard the account as to that individual?
Yes.
And isn't it a fact that when you heard the account from Ms. Wuornos, she had changed her story?
Yes.
In fact, on each and every occasion, as you asked her as to her reasons for killing Mr. Mallory or killing any of the other men, her stories changed, did they not?
Her reasons were always self-defense. And details changed, yes.
The details changed, whether she stole money or how much money she took. In the case of Mr. Mallory, didn't she tell you different amounts that she took?
She may have.
It was difficult for her to keep her stories together, was it not? From one date to another?
It's difficult for Ms. Wuornos to remember certain things from one time to another, very definitely.
Do you remember her talking to you about a Christian guy?
Yes.
Do you remember watching her in a statement describing the police officer as the killing of that Christian guy?
Objection, Your Honor. Eighth Amendment grounds beyond the scope of the sentence.
That's sustained again.
Doctor, would it be fair to say that as you viewed her videotaped confession, and as she described the events of that videotape to you, of those events that she described in the videotape, over and over again, her accounts of those incidences, those murders, changed?
Oh, even like on the tape, you mean?
No, I'm talking about between the tape and when you heard it. The first time.
Yes, it even changed on the tape.
In the case of Mr. Mallory, there was no indication of Mr. Mallory raping her, was there on tape?
No.
And in your first interview, there was no indication of Mr. Mallory raping her, was there? In February.
Not specifically, no. March, you mean?
Well, you met her first in February and she made no accounts to you that she'd been raped by Richard Mallory.
I don't recall. Okay, so I'm saying, I'm presuming not.
Well, you take extensive notes, don't you, Doc?
Yes, and as you know, there are no notes for that for the February because all I did was testing.
And in March, but she did not speak with you or say to you, I was raped.
I honestly don't know. I'm going to assume not because she didn't say it in March.
And in March, she was not. She told you she had not been raped. She never made
No,
any
she
account.
didn't tell me she had not been. She did not tell me she had been. That's different.
Well, you told us that she has the ability to remember episodes.
Yes.
You think that a woman that has been anally raped and sodomized and vaginally attacked and brutalized to the extent that she claims to have been, but to you, would be able to forget that episode?
Would she be able to forget it? In terms of both her condition at the time she was arrested and for some period of time after that, I can see where she may not have related it, yes.
But eventually, she did come around to relating that to you, and that was in December of 1991.
Objection to the form of the question.
Isn't that true? That's the first account that you received from her.
From her, yes.
That was almost
Directly from her, yes.
9 or 10 months later.
Directly from her, yes.
Now, this defendant was capable of working, wasn't she? Throughout, she
of
was
what?
capable of working, capable of holding down a job. Is that what you're telling us?
She had held, unskilled jobs before that.
But she made
Not
choices.
long.
She made choices not to hold down those jobs, to go on to greener pastures, make more money as a prostitute.
That's assuming some sort of cognitive sitting back making a choice. In the sense that nobody had a 45 at her head when she did it, yes, she made a choice in the sense of what were her possible options as she perceived them to be, that's different. And that may not be correct, but in terms of what she perceived, that's different.
Well, she had no mental dysfunction that prevented her from earning an honest living if she chose to do so. Isn't that true?
Well, she could probably hold down a certain kind of a job for longer than a few months, yes.
If she chose to do so.
Yes.
So she doesn't suffer any type of impairment that prevents her from earning an honest living.
Objection to the form of the question.
Overruled. hint if you can.
No, she can work at unskilled jobs, yes. She could earn a living that way.
She can make more money as a prostitute. Is that what you told you?
Is that what she told me? She said it was good money. I pinned her down. Did she in fact make more money than she could probably at other jobs? No, not when she's always scrambling to get the rent.
So she was not making good money as a prostitute, was she? Is that what you're telling us she told you?
I'm saying that if you pin her down in terms of what she says she was making the X number of times a day, that doesn't jive with somebody who needed to make the rent or needed to go out so that they could pay the electric bill or whatever. Those two facts don't mesh.
That didn't jive what she was telling, how much money she was making, and yet at the same time telling you she didn't have money for rent.
Right, I'm saying those two didn't jive.
So she was telling you in one case something that did not mesh with the other. You're telling me a different story.
Well, yeah, well, except that the stories aren't the same, but I mean, if you pursue the two stories out, you're gonna find that they don't coalesce.
Doctor, you said that Aileen Wuornos is not psychotic, is that correct?
Correct.
She's not delusional?
Okay. Not that I'm aware of, and she denies them.
Isn't the fact that she has no organic brain dysfunction?
That's not a fact.
You're saying this cortical dysfunction is now an organic brain dysfunction?
Same thing.
There's no medical proof of any dysfunction, though, is there?
No, that's what I said earlier. There's no structural damage. That's different than saying a cortical dysfunction.
Isn't the fact that you did not seek to have a neurologist test her, because you knew what the results would be, that there would be no medical finding to support your opinion?
Excuse me? I'm sorry. Say that again.
Isn't it true, doctor, you did not seek the help of a neurologist to do a CAT scan or an MRI or anything of a
They're
brain?
not nearly as sensitive as a neuropsychological function. Why would I do that?
Doctor, you didn't do it, did you?
No. No. All the studies indicate they're not nearly as sensitive.
You're
so
not a doctor.
I'm not going to do
Are
that.
you a medical doctor?
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
Saying that there's an objection.
Objection, Your Honor, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So you're making a medical decision without consulting a neurologist as to the extent of any brain dysfunction that she has.
I'm making a neuropsychological decision, which is what I'm trained to do.
Well, your training has led you to testify in court, you say, some 25 times in death penalty cases.
Somewhere around there.
In each of those cases, those were situations where juries had already found someone to be guilty of first-degree murder, was it not?
You're saying, was I always testifying at the penalty phase?
When you testified at the penalty phase, had the individual already been found guilty of murder in first degree?
Obviously, if I was testifying at the penalty phase, I'm saying, I don't recall whether they were all at the penalty phase is all I'm saying.
But when you
But-
testified at the penalty
Penalty
phase,
phase, they would have already been found guilty, yes.
in those instances, you had testified on behalf of the defendant as to why the death penalty was not appropriate.
Objection, Your Honor. Form of the
No.
question and asked and answered.
Rephrase.
Doctor, isn't the fact that you personally are against the death penalty?
I professionally, as I stated to you before,
Yes, you told me you were personally and professionally. against
Objection,
death
Your Honor.
no, I did not, sir.
penalty.
You asked me what my feelings were on the death penalty professionally, and I said, to me, it does not make much sense. That is different. You asked me my personal opinion, and I said, I guess that would be the same as my professional opinion. I don't see a difference.
So they would be the same.
Right? That it doesn't make any sense from a
Not what I
professional
asked you,
point
whether
of
you thought it
view.
made any sense, doctor. I asked you if your personal and professional opinion was that you were not in favor of the death penalty.
Not a matter of whether I'm in favor or not in favor. I can't answer that. It's something I have to deal with. From
You
a
don't know
professional
whether or
point
not
of-
you're in favor or against death penalty, personally or professionally.
No, it's just something, it's reality. It is. It's something I deal with.
It's not a trick question, doctor. Are you or aren't you? No answer.
No answer.
Doctor, when Ms. Wuornos was describing to you the shooting, the murder of Gino Antonio, do you recall that?
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope of the sentencing.
Say the objection.
Would it be fair to say that on each of the accounts that Ms. Wuornos told you, she claimed that she was acting in self-defense on each of the shootings that she was involved in?
Yes.
You familiar with the autopsy of Gino Antonio?
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope of the sentencing.
Say the objection.
Did you consider in your diagnosis any of the relevant autopsies as to any individual, including Mr. Mallory, and determining whether or not Aileen Wuornos was telling you the truth about what had occurred out there that night?
In my diagnosis, no, it's irrelevant.
I think the question's been answered, Your Honor.
So whether or not the physical facts substantiate what the defendant told you happened the night that you killed Richard Mallory, that would have no effect upon your opinion.
There's no effect upon my diagnosis whatsoever. She's a borderline regardless of what occurred out there.
But you told us that the mere fact that someone is a borderline, as you phrase it, doesn't make them kill.
No, there are borderlines who don't kill. There are borderlines who do. There are people who kill who are not borderline. So there's not a one-to-one correlation between borderline or any other personality dysfunction and homicide.
So the fact that you tell us that Ms. Wuornos had this borderline personality the night that she murdered Richard Mallory has no bearing on whether or not what really happened out there is what she told you.
That's not what I said at all.
Okay, you taught her perception.
No, I'm saying that certainly the fact that she is a borderline has a lot to do with her perceptions, and it has a lot to do with the way she's going to react given that situation out there. That situation out there does not have anything to do with her diagnosis, with reaching a conclusion about her diagnosis.
Well, diagnosis, though, does not, of that personality, necessarily equate to someone going out and killing, does it?
Correct, it does not.
What is an antisocial personality, Doctor?
It is an individual who has all the 12 characteristics, three or four of the 12 characteristics before the age of 15, and plus the adult characteristics in the DSM-3R. They are primarily having to do with acting out against society, and also sort of one's view of that, not only the acting out, but the view of that.
Did you consider whether or not Ms. Wuornos would fit into the characterization of an antisocial personality?
I certainly entertained that as a rule-out diagnosis.
And did you find that to be the case?
I found it not to be the case.
So you ruled out antisocial personality?
In my clinical opinion, she is not antisocial personality. She is borderline personality.
Well, Doctor, let me ask you, as you reviewed the records that were presented to you, may I assume that those records that were presented to you were given to you by defense counsel?
Yes,
You reviewed her school records.
yes.
Did her school records reveal that prior to the age of 15, she'd been truant many times?
No, did not. No, there was no mention of truancy whatsoever.
Did you read the accounts of Lori and Barry Wuornos as to whether or not she had run away from home or was truant from school?
Yes,
And did in fact Lori and Barry Wuornos recount incidents where she had been truant from school and also had run away?
I took the school records as to whether or not she'd been truant. As to whether or not she had run away, Ms. Wuornos had talked about running away. The issue was whether she had run away before or after the age of 15, and I think it's twice, and I think it says not excluding, avoiding physical or sexual abuse,
Well, Doctor,
or any kind of abuse, I think it says.
didn't Ms. Wuornos tell you that no one in her family was sexually abusing her?
Yes,
You choose to believe that or you disbelieve that?
no, I believe that. Although even her cousin raised some issue, and certainly her mother raised an issue about that, but she denied it. So that's certainly up for question.
Well,
I do not assume that she's been abused, although the question has been seriously raised by two other people besides Ms. Wuornos.
Doctor, you feel it necessary when I ask you if Ms. Wuornos told you something to tell me what three other people supposedly told you?
Objection argumentative, Your Honor.
Say the objection.
Judge, I'm simply asking the witness respond to my questions. Yes, sir. So is it true or not that you read Lori and Barry Wuornos' accounts of her running away from home and truancy prior to the age of 15?
I read their accounts of that.
They in fact said that she had on occasion.
They said that.
Did you accept that account, or was that, or you just simply?
I put that into some kind of, perspective. Yes, I read that, I evaluated that, I weighed it, yes.
You also accept some of the defendant's own accounts that she had run away from home.
Yes,
Did you read the accounts of Ms. Wuornos also fighting with other individuals and initiating fights as told by her sister and her brother, Lori and Barry?
I don't recall that coming from them.
Was the source Ms. Wuornos that she was engaged in fights?
It was, she related being engaged in fights after the age of 15. And I don't recall either her brother or sister saying that she had initiated fights prior to the age of 15. And all of these, keep in mind, must be prior to the age of 15. Okay.
Well, did Ms. Wuornos describe to you her fights with the Dawn Neiman?
I read the account that Dawn gave. I asked Ms. Wuornos about that.
And in fact, Dawn Neiman indicated that they had actually fights with knives prior to the age of 15?
She indicated one fight, and that I recall, and I don't recall that she gave an age, but it was after Ms. Wuornos had, according to Dawn Neiman, begun prostituting.
And at the age of under 15, is it a fact that Ms. Wuornos also found herself to be scarred by a fire that had been set?
Yes,
Is it a fact that in both Lori Grody and Barry Wuornos' accounts that fire was set by Aileen Wuornos?
okay.
If you recall.
No, I don't recall Barry's. I recall Lori account and Ms. Wuornos' account.
Is it a fact that in those accounts, there were other allegations that Ms. Wuornos had been setting other fires?
That account, yes, there was from Lori, not from the school.
Now, is it a fact that the defendant, through the course of your interviews with her, lied often to you?
Did she lie often to me? My clinical opinion, no, she didn't.
So you believe she told you the truth all the time?
No.
Sometimes she lied, sometimes she told the truth.
Sometimes she told the truth. Sometimes I believe she told the truth as she believed it to be. And sometimes I have questions.
She wasn't delusional, was she, when she recounted the events to you?
No,
She wasn't hallucinating.
no, something else entirely.
And you didn't bother to check to see whether or not her accounts of what was happening between she and these other people was accurate based on any physical evidence, did you?
Objection, argumentative, asked and answered, Your Honor.
Rephrase your question.
Did you review any physical evidence, any autopsies, anything other than what Ms. Wuornos told you happened between she and these men to verify her story to you?
The investigative reports, that's all.
Oh, well, the investigative report certainly didn't indicate any assertion by Ms. Wuornos that she claimed to have been raped by Richard Mallory, did it?
You asked me if I had read anything to try and match her story to the physical evidence. Is that correct? Did I understand you? Maybe you
correct.
misunderstood.
No, I think you
Okay.
understood.
Okay. And I said, I read the investigative reports. That's all. Autopsies? No. But the investigative reports in terms of, which gave some physical evidence.
So you don't know whether or not the autopsies and the physical evidence that would be revealed from those autopsies would be consistent with her accounts to you?
Objection, Your Honor, I asked and answered beyond the scope.
Overruled, answer if you can.
Not from that source. No, I don't.
Isn't it a fact that during Mr. Barry Wuornos' accounts, he described numerous times when Ms. Wuornos had stolen articles from his homes and from other people?
I don't recall that. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I don't recall that. I recall him saying that he asked her to leave.
During the course of your reading Barry Warren's account, wasn't one of the reasons he asked her to leave was a discovery that she had stolen from his wife? Does that help refresh your recollection?
No, that was not it said she made a general pest of herself and wouldn't clean up after herself and share in the household responsibilities or do her part. And so he asked her to leave. That's my recollection.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I may not be recalling it accurately, but that's my recollection of it.
You were aware that the defendant was using numerous aliases.
I was aware of these two,
Objection has been
yes.
answered, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Were you aware that she was in possession of items of stolen identification?
Yes,
And she had recounted that to you?
yes,
And that she used this identification under
Yeah.
alias names?
yes.
She indicate to you how she'd obtained some of those by stealing them?
Let's see. One, she told me a gentleman had given her his wife's identification. That was the one, I think they were down the Keys. She got that one.
And then she used that identification, didn't she? She used that name.
She used the name. I don't know whether she used the identification or not, but she'd used the name. I
Tell you
can't
what-
remember how she got the other one, Mr. Moore.
Don't recall.
No, I don't.
Do you know of at least two she told you about?
Two.
Now, would it be fair to say that her pattern of work since the age of 15, that she has not held down a consistent job?
Correct. I'd say that's fair to say.
And that would be based upon her self-reporting, wouldn't you? You really have no other verifiable source other than the defendant on that.
The deposition from Ms. Moore.
All right, so we are in agreement then that she was not holding down a job on a regular basis.
Objection, Your Honor. Just asked and answered.
But you also had her family members that indicated that she was not capable of holding down a steady job, or had not held a steady job.
Insofar as they knew, yeah, but that was a lot of years ago.
And isn't it the fact that you were aware of her arrest history?
Yes,
That arrest history indicated that she had repeated offenses.
yes.
Why don't you tell us what she described to you as her offenses that she had been involved with?
Armed robbery in 1980. That's the one that she was sentenced for. Petty theft in 1978. Dropped. Concealed weapon when she was 18 or 19 years old. And that was dropped, but she did have a suspended license subsequent to that same charge. A grand theft auto in 86, which was dropped. And in 1984, uttering a forged instrument. Bonded, it says bonded, picked up, ROR'd, and then questionable. I have a question.
All right, you guys. I apologize. I have to stop at 3, and it is 2:58. If I can get back, I mean, I know I can get back. I have an appointment at 3:30 that I have to get to, so I was hoping to get through this today. I figured I might not. We've got about 30 minutes left. So Flashman gives you an hour to sleep before your stream. If I get time tonight, I may jump on here and just finish up this 30 minutes. I will let you guys all know. It'll be up in Discord. But thank you, everyone that has hung out today. Gabby, thank you for hanging out and being around that in case my power went out, which it didn't.
Yeah, definitely.
But it might tonight. I don't know if I can get back in time. I'm thinking out loud. I forgot the storms are supposed to hit tonight. If we don't finish it tonight, we will finish it on, well, dang, not tomorrow. You too, Shax. Thanks for hanging out. Where are you at? There you are. We will finish it. I promise. Tomorrow night, we are going to continue on with our Marcella Chittister. I don't know how you say her name. She's the one that crashed into the boat club up in Wisconsin, or Michigan. I always want to say Wisconsin. Close. in Michigan last April, so almost a year ago. Her trial happened a few weeks ago, so we started it last Thursday. That'll be an evening stream. I'm planning on starting at approximately 5:30ish Eastern time, 4:30 Adair time, so we can get through day 2 of that. It's not a long trial. It's just going to take us a couple weeks or a few weeks to get through it because I'm only doing it on Thursday nights. I'm not sure Friday morning if I'm going to stream yet or not. If I can jump in and finish this 30 minutes up Friday before my granddaughter gets here, that's probably what I will do. So I have to talk to my son to see what time he's going to be bringing her over, and then we will figure it out. Everything will be posted in Discord. So if you are not in our Discord, you should be, because it's entertaining in there. Gabby keeps everyone on their toes in there, and Haley Mouse, Flashman, Ronnie, everybody is fun over there. So it's an easygoing Discord. Just so y'all, it's so you don't. There's no stress. It's all good. But Gabby put the link up in chat. Gabby is not scary. I don't care what you've heard.
Thanks, Flash fan.
But
I
so
timed back out and everything. Jeez.
But again, I thank you everyone so much for hanging out. We're gonna get through this thing. The end is near. I'm not gonna put a day on it because I've already been wrong once. And I know what happens when I say something's gonna happen. It doesn't. So there's that. But I have this lady paused. She can take a breather while we do. I am not scary either. Frybear, have a good day or good night. Hopefully your hospital is slowing down with all these things. Yes, happy birthday, Haley. Hope you've had a great day. Thank you for spending your birthday with us. Flashman, go take a nap. That's an order. And everyone else. Chrissy, always great to see you. Hopefully we can see you tomorrow night too. Sir Frank, everybody. I don't know who I'm missing. If I'm Ronnie, all of you, appreciate everybody. That's all I got. So I'm gonna end the stream right now, and I'm going to go drive on my tires that I should that are fine. They're fine. So I'll see you guys all later.